Chapter 22:15. All of a sudden, the arena became eerily quiet. Su Ming and the bald cultivator faced off against each other. Ning Yu sat cross-legged on the ground, seemingly resting with his eyes closed. Other than Ning Yu himself, even Su Ming did not know that he was trying to break through to the Essence Immortal realm. What a monster! Inside the Red Fiend sword, the Red Fiend smacked his lips. To think that Ning Yu could think of breaking through to the Essence Immortal realm in the arena. One had to know. Ning Yu's great tribulation of the Ancestor Immortal realm was terrifying enough. One could imagine how terrifying the great tribulation of the Essence Immortal realm would be. Many people would probably be affected by the great tribulation of the Essence Immortal realm here. I have to refine my flying sword well and try to break through to the half-step peerless immortal level. The Red Fiend took out the thin cultivator's silvery white flying sword and began devouring it wholeheartedly. The process of cultivation was dull and boring. Time passed. In the blink of an eye, half an hour passed. Within half an hour, Ning Yu adjusted his mental state to the extreme. It could be said that as long as Ning Yu was willing, he could trigger the great tribulation of the Essence Immortal realm at any time. Go. After observing for half an hour, the bald cultivator and Zhu Minghai finally decided to attack. Among them, the bald cultivator attacked Su Ming while Zhu Minghai attacked Ning Yu. Crack! At that moment, the space above the arena suddenly split open, and a group of cultivators emerged from the void. Rumble! As soon as these cultivators appeared, they immediately attacked the people in the square. Ah! My eyes! My leg is broken. Get out of my way, let me go. Walk a few rounds, I'm more handsome than you, let me go first. In an instant, the entire square became abnormally chaotic. All sorts of shouts and curses could be heard. They're finally here. Looking at the experts who had appeared in the air, Shueyu Fairy and the rest of the people in the pavilion looked slightly solemn. They had planned for so long for this moment. Heavenly Star Array, rise. In the next instant, Water Moon Fairy, True Lord Kwangshen, and God-slaying Sun flew into the air and waved their hands. Whoosh, 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 whoosh. 4 enormous pillars of light emerged from the 4 corners of the Heavenly Star Plaza. Kai 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 kai. After the beam of light flew into the air, it split into 2, then into 4. In a short time, the Heavenly Star Array was set up. All the experts were trapped in the Heavenly Star Array. D.I. Wentian, why are you still not surrendering? Aqua Moon Fairy's eyes stared fixedly at the young martial artist in blue clothes in midair, and she shouted in a low voice, unless your cultivation has reached the Saint Immortal realm, it's absolutely impossible for you to escape under the Heavenly Star formation. Saint Immortal? He. The corner of the blue-clothed man's mouth curled up, and he said with a faint smile, even if I'm not a Saint Immortal, I'm not afraid of this Heavenly Star formation. True Monarch Kwangshen. The next moment, the man in blue roared, if we don't act now, when will we? Bang! Hearing the blue-robed man's words, True Lord Kwangshen clenched his right fist and punched at the god-slaying Sun beside him. Because True Monarch Kwangshen had hidden himself very well, the godslayer child wasn't able to stop him. A crisp sound rang out. The god-slaying Sun was sent flying. Coincidentally, the god-slaying Sun was sent flying in the direction of Ning Yu. Attack! Ning Yu had planned to break through to the virtual immortal realm, but the sudden turn of events forced him to suppress the energy in his body. Ning Yu faced the bald cultivator and Zhu Minghai, while Su Ming went to help the god-slaying Sun. Die! The bald cultivator and Zhu Minghai roared when they saw Ning Yu charging at them. Noisy. Ning Yu flipped his wrist and summoned the Red Demon Sword. Although the Red Demon hadn't broken through to the half-step peerless immortal realm in half an hour, the Red Demon Sword's grade had reached the peak of an ingot. Using the Red Demon Sword against the bald cultivator and Zhu Minghai was very convenient for Ning Yu. Crack, crack. 2 crisp sounds rang out consecutively. The bald cultivator and Zhu Minghai were killed in an instant. Even without ascending to the virtual immortal realm, Ning Yu's overall strength was on par with a mid-stage peerless immortal. The bald cultivator and Zhu Minghai, on the other hand, were only at the peak of early-stage peerless immortal. When fighting with them, Ningyu did not need to use his full strength at all and could easily kill them. This was all thanks to the energy in the thin cultivator's body and the red demon sword that had reached the peak of an ingot. Otherwise, Ningyu would have to go through a lot of trouble to kill them. Gasp! Su Ming had just caught the god-slaying sun when he saw Ningyu kill the bald cultivator and Zhu Minghai. Without a doubt. Su Ming sucked in a breath of cold air. He'd thought he'd overestimated Ningyu, but he'd still underestimated Ningyu. Ningyu's strength had already surpassed him by far too much. He only had his current fighting strength because he'd devoured the blood essence of peerless immortals. After a while, his fighting strength would drop to the virtual immortal realm. When that time came, even 100 of him wouldn't be Ningyu's match. Ningyu, this is for you. Su Ming gritted his teeth, fished out a jade bottle, and tossed it to Ningyu. Slap. Ningyu first tossed the bald cultivator and Zhu Minghai's corpses into the red demon sword, then caught the bottle firmly. Blood essence. With just a glance, Ningyu could tell that the jade bottle contained blood essence. The blood essence of a peerless immortal. Good luck. Su Ming cupped his fists at Ningyu, then brought the god-slaying sun to the pavilion. The god-slaying sun was gravely injured. If he didn't receive treatment in time, the consequences would be dire. Wait. Seeing that Su Ming was about to leave, Ningyu threw the jade bottle back and said, "Keep the blood essence." Di Wantian's attack on the brilliant Void Alliance was planned for a long time. You don't have the strength to defend yourself, so it's very likely that you'll be killed. As for the god-slaying sun, Ningyu looked at the god-slaying sun in Su Ming's arms and said hesitantly, "He's gravely injured. If we don't treat him in time, he might fall ill." "Are you sure you can cure him?" Su Ming was surprised. The god-slaying sun was indeed gravely injured. True Lord Crazed God's sneak attack had injured his organs. Su Ming didn't believe Ningyu could cure the god-slaying sun. Cut the crap. Ningyu waved his hand. "If you don't want to watch the god-slaying sun die, then get the hell out of here." "All right." After a moment's hesitation, Su Ming chose to believe Ningyu. He carefully placed the god-slaying sun on the ground and turned to leave. Whoosh. However, when Su Ming turned to leave, he tossed the jade bottle containing the blood essence to Ningyu. Crack. Since Su Ming was giving him the blood essence a second time, Ningyu didn't refuse. However, Ningyu didn't think too much of it. He forced a drop of the divine war body's blood from his heart and dropped it in the god-slaying sun's mouth. Fortunately, Ningyu had awakened the divine war body's bloodline to its fullest. Otherwise, no matter how much blood he forced out, he wouldn't be able to help the god-slaying sun. Buzz buzz. The divine war body's blood was indeed extraordinary. Chapter 22:16. This is the blood of a fully awakened body of the war god. Killing God's son used his perception to sense the situation in his body. Suddenly, his eyes widened and his face was full of shock. To be honest, the killer god's son had basically given up when he was ambushed by true immortal Quangshan. He knew that since true immortal Quangshan was Di Wantian's man, it meant that he was well prepared. After being ambushed by true immortal Quangshan, no one else would be able to heal him unless the brilliant Void Alliance's leader personally intervened. But the Alliance leader didn't have the time. Di Wantian had brought many Peak Essence Immortal and 2 Peak Peerless Immortal Skyfians to attack the brilliant Void Alliance. The Alliance leader had to deal with the 2 Peak Peerless Immortal Skyfians and didn't have time for the killer god's son. Shueyu Fairy, on the other hand, knew medicine. However, she was being held up by true immortal Quangshan and couldn't do anything. Under such circumstances, the killer god's son didn't have any hope. Who would have thought? Ningyu had actually awakened 100% of the war god's body bloodline and used the blood essence from his heart to heal his internal organs. Words cannot express my gratitude. The killer god's son wasn't an indecisive person. He cupped his fists at Ningyu and said, "I'll come for you after I take care of true immortal Quangshan." Swoosh. The killer god's son flashed as he spoke, ready to charge out. However, before the killer god's son could leave, Ningyu flicked his wrist and tossed out a drop of blood. "You haven't fully recovered from your internal injuries. Take this drop of body of the war god's son in case you need it." If Ningyu was given more time, He could definitely heal the killer god's son. However, the battle was intense and the killer god's son had to join the fray as soon as possible. Otherwise, Shueyu Fairy wouldn't be able to hold on, because true immortal Quangshan wasn't the only one attacking Shueyu Fairy. There was another peerless immortal Skyfiend as well. Fighting 1 against 2, Shueyu Fairy could only hang on bitterly. Rumble. The killer god's son immediately relieved the pressure on Shueyu Fairy's shoulders. Not dead. True immortal Quangshan frowned when he saw the killer god's son. You've been hit by my killer god fist. Humph. True immortal Quangshan, I didn't expect you to be such a person. Die. The killing god's son let out a cold snort, then rushed straight toward Supreme Quangshan. If I can hurt you once, I can hurt you again. True Lord Quangshan smirked as he looked at the approaching god-slaying son. Master has prepared for a long time to attack the Kuanshu Alliance. After today, the entire Kuanshu Alliance will be razed to the ground. Cut the crap. Let's see who's more powerful. The killing god's son growled. Bang. As soon as they started fighting, the god-slaying son was at a disadvantage. After all, the injuries of the god-killing son had not completely healed, and his combat power was much lower than when he was at his peak. Even the god-slaying prince at his peak was no match for crazed god-perfected immortal, let alone now. Hold on for 10 minutes. Fairy Shueyu sent a secret transmission to the divine killing child, then unleashed her trump card at the peerless immortal celestial demon in front of her. As long as they could take care of the peerless immortal level celestial demons, Goddess Shueyu would be able to help kill the divine children. At the same time, in the arena. After the god-slaying son left, Ningyu immediately sat down cross-legged and swallowed the blood Su Ming had given him. Hiss, hiss. The blood essence of a peerless immortal was extremely effective. As soon as he tossed the blood essence into his mouth, Ningyu felt a terrifying energy enter his body through his throat. This energy showed signs of triggering the Great Tribulation of the virtual immortal realm. This was a critical period. How could Ningyu undergo the Great Tribulation of the virtual immortal realm? Putting aside whether he could survive it or not, there were many people here. If he underwent the tribulation here, he would be greatly affected. Whoosh! Just as Ningyu was secretly suppressing the energy in his body, a figure in blue suddenly appeared in front of him. Ningyu, we meet again. This figure was none other than Di Wentian. The corners of Di Wentian's lips curled up slightly. He said to Ningyu, you really didn't disappoint me. You can even kill my clone. You do disappoint me. As Ningyu suppressed his energy, he shook his head and said, I've already stolen 2 of your doppelganger's elixirs and killed 1 of your doppelgangers. Why didn't you learn from your mistakes and send another doppelganger? Ningyu saw everything clearly. Although the figure before him looked like Di Wentian, Ningyu was certain that this was not Di Wentian's main body. Just like the thin cultivator, this was a clone. So what if you're a clone? I can kill you all the same. The blue-robed clone harumphed and leaped into the air, charging at Ningyu at a terrifying speed. Although the blue-robed cultivator was Di Wentian's clone, his cultivation had reached the terrifying peak virtual immortal realm. Ever since Di Wentian ascended to peerless immortal, his clone's strength had risen along with him. The combined strength of a peak virtual immortal clone was comparable to a mid-stage peerless immortal. Idiot. Ningyu drew the red demon sword and slashed through the air. Crack. The gigantic sword aura split the void in half. The power of Ningyu's attack was at its peak. Originally, the red fiend had been devouring the bald warrior and Zhu Minghai. However, upon receiving Ningyu's instructions, it immediately stopped devouring them. Instead, it transferred all the energy within the bald warrior and Zhu Minghai's bodies into the red fiend sword. The power of this attack was equivalent to the bald cultivator and Zhu Minghai self-detonating at the same time. Damn it! The blue-robed clone cursed under his breath. He'd thought that killing Ningyu would be a piece of cake. But now, he had to admit that he'd underestimated Ningyu. Kill him. With a low growl, the blue-robed clone opened his mouth and spat out a beam of cold light. Crack! The cold light and the sword ray collided. A crisp sound rang out. Then, the clone's cold light shattered, and the sword Ray Ning Yu had slashed out continued its attack at the clone. I'm so angry. The clone's nose was crooked from anger. He went for wool and came home shorn. The blue-robed clone was very frustrated. If his clone died in battle, then Di Wentian, who was fighting with the brilliant Void Alliance Master in the Void, would definitely be greatly affected. See you later. At the thought of this, the blue-robed clone immediately turned around and burrowed into the void. Where are you going? How could Ning Yu allow the blue-robed clone to escape? He leaped up and charged out with the red demon sword in his hand. Kai Kai. The blue-robed clone was very fast, and in the blink of an eye, he had entered the void. Ning Yu arrived soon after. Pest. However, as soon as he entered the void, Ning Yu gasped. He discovered that there were 4 martial artists fighting fiercely in the void. 4 martial artists, 1 against 3. One of them was in his 60s or 70s, and his white robe was fluttering. The other 3 martial artists were in their 20s or 30s. Di Wentian. How sharp were Ning Yu's eyes? Chapter 22:17. Clone, come here. Di Wentian berated without even looking at Ning Yu. Yes. The blue-robed clone dared not tarry. He quickly tore through the void and sped up. How could Ning Yu give up such a juicy piece of meat that was already in his mouth? He snorted coldly and tossed the red demon sword in his hand. Swoosh. The red demon sword was so fast that it only took a second to arrive before the blue-robed clone. Fart. The sword pierced through the blue-clothed doppelganger's heart without any deviation. Fart. Fresh blood sprayed from the clone's mouth. The clone's aura plummeted from peak virtual immortal to ancestral immortal. Devour. The Red Fiend, who was hidden within the Red Fiend sword, immediately unleashed a violent devouring power, frantically devouring the blue-clothed avatar. In a short time, the clone was devoured until only a skeleton was left. Fart. As soon as the clone was killed, Di Wentian's main body, who was fighting the white-robed elder, spat out a mouthful of blood. He was greatly affected. Bam! The white-robed elder seized the opportunity and punched Di Wentian in the chest. The immense force directly caused Di Wentian to be flung several feet back. A crisp sound rang out. The bluestone floor was pulverized by Di Wentian. Many thanks. After defeating Di Wentian with a single move, the white-robed elder immediately sent a voice transmission to Ning Yu. Di Wentian's strength has fallen to half of his peak. I'll leave him to you. No matter what, you have to hold him off for 2 hours. As soon as he finished speaking, the white-robed elder turned around and launched a terrifying attack at the 2-peak peerless immortal Skyphians. Trying to hold me off. Di Wentian quickly calmed down. After all, he was a peerless immortal. Ning Yu, on the other hand, was only a half-step elemental immortal. Between the two of them, there was an entire grade difference. Even if his strength was halved, Di Wentian was still confident that he could easily kill Ning Yu. Wrong. Ning Yu sheathed the red demon sword. I'm not trying to hold you off, I'm trying to kill you. Ha ha ha. It was as if Di Wentian had heard the funniest joke in the world. He first tilted his head back and laughed maniacally. After that, his tone changed as he coldly stated, if you want to kill me, you need to have the strength to do so. The word attainment was uttered. Di Wentian hurriedly dashed out. Lifting his right leg, he ruthlessly kicked out at Ning Yu's head. Staring at Di Wentian who was rushing towards him, Ning Yu's countenance turned extremely heavy. With his current strength, it was indeed extremely difficult for him to contend against Di Wentian. Leave Stellar Sky City. In an instant, Ning Yu thought of a countermeasure. After leaving Stellar Sky City, he would trigger the Grand Tribulation of the Essence Immortal Realm and use it to deal with Di Wentian. Di Wentian was a peerless immortal, and his overall strength was comparable to a peak peerless immortal. Although he was injured and his strength was halved, he could still easily kill a late-stage peerless immortal. As for Ning Yu, after devouring Su Ming's blood, he was merely at the peak of the middle stage of peerless immortal. It was already difficult enough to face a late-stage peerless immortal, let alone Di Wentian. Let's go. Ning Yu was not an indecisive person. He immediately tore open the void and dove in. Where do you think you're going? Di yelled. Ning Yu had ruined his plans again and again. How could he tolerate this? If Ning Yu hadn't stolen 2 of his Emperor Immortal Pill clones, his cultivation wouldn't have been early stage Peerless Immortal, but mid-stage Peerless Immortal. That was why Di really wanted to kill Ning Yu. Crack, crack. At its peak, the stellar sky formation could indeed stop a peak Peerless Immortal. However, the current stellar sky formation was in tatters, and its power was greatly diminished. In its current state, the stellar sky formation naturally couldn't stop Ning Yu and Di. Whoosh, whoosh. The 2 of them sped out of Stellar Sky City, one in front and one behind. Where do you think you're going? Di yelled as he chased after them. This day next year will be the anniversary of your death. Wait a little longer. Ning Yu didn't respond to Di. Instead, he was calculating the distance. As long as he was a certain distance away from Stellar Sky City, he could stop. As for now, no matter how much Di cursed, Ning Yu didn't respond. Damn it. Di cursed inwardly as they got further and further away from Stellar Sky City. Di was very worried as well. He'd planned for a long time to take down the Brilliant Void Alliance. He'd thought he could easily take down the Brilliant Void Alliance, but the Alliance head's strength had increased tremendously to peak Peerless Immortal. The 2 peak Peerless Immortal celestial demons he'd brought with him hadn't gained any advantage against the Alliance head. Di was worried that something would happen if he didn't return. However, he wasn't willing to return just like that. Because when he lowered his speed, Ning Yu lowered his speed. When he increased his speed, Ning Yu increased his speed. In short, Ning Yu kept a certain distance from him, which made him salivate. It's about time. At that moment, Ning Yu suddenly stopped and looked around. He turned back and said, Di, since you want to kill me so badly, I'll give you a chance. Give me a chance. Di was taken aback. He frowned. Have you lost your mind? Hee. Ning Yu smiled. Then, energy surged out of his body and triggered his great virtual immortal tribulation, rumble. In midair, black tribulation clouds appeared in an instant. I'm going to die. Di cursed inwardly at the sudden change. Swoosh. Without time to think, Di tried to flee. At his level, there was no need to rush his great virtual immortal tribulation. Even if he stayed in the great virtual immortal tribulation, he could deal with it calmly. But this great virtual immortal tribulation was Ning Yu's. Given how insane Ning Yu was, the power of his great virtual immortal tribulation would definitely rival the great peerless immortal tribulation of ordinary martial artists. Who would dare to stay in it for long? Boom, 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 boom. However, before Di could leave, 4 terrifying tribulation clouds came crashing down from the void. I'm sorry. Please help me block some tribulation clouds. Ning Yu's lips curled up. He said coldly, although the power of the great virtual immortal tribulation will double with you around, it's totally worth it to drag you down with me. Lunatic. Di looked a little terrified. Ning Yu's performance was too crazy. The 2 of them were in the tribulation clouds, which increased the power of the tribulation clouds by several times. This could be seen from the first 4 tribulation clouds. The power of each tribulation cloud was equivalent to the full force attack of a mid-stage peerless immortal. Rumble. As he was thinking, the 4 tribulation clouds came crashing down. 2 of them were aimed at Ning Yu, while the other 2 were aimed at Di. Crack, crack. Faced with 2 mid-stage peerless immortal tribulation clouds, Ning Yu used his fists to smash them. Crack, crack. Di and Ning Yu did not do anything different. He kicked out twice, shattering the 2 tribulation clouds. Ning Yu, I'm not done with you. Chapter 22:18. There are too many who want to grind my bones to dust. Ning Yu shrugged at Di. Who do you think you are? You. Di gritted his teeth at Ning Yu's taunts. However, Di knew very well that he couldn't afford to clash with Ning Yu right now. The tribulation clouds had already locked onto the 2 of them. The first 4 mid-stage peerless immortal tribulation clouds were just appetizers. The truly terrifying ones were yet to come. Rumble. Reality proved that Di Wentian's calm was very wise. In the next moment, the void trembled. Swoosh swoosh swoosh. Dozens of terrifying tribulation clouds appeared in the void and smashed down fiercely. Gasp. Di Wentian sucked in a cold breath when he sensed the power of the tribulation clouds. Peak mid-stage peerless immortal. The power of the tribulation clouds had risen from mid-stage peerless immortal to peak mid-stage peerless immortal. Shatter. Di Wentian didn't dare tarry. He hurriedly infused his immortal chi into his fists and punched with both fists. Crack crack crack. As Di Wentian's fists punched out, the tribulation clouds hurtling toward him shattered one after another. Compared to this, Ningyu's actions weren't much inferior. However, Ningyu didn't use his immortal chi. Instead, he activated his body of the war god and used his physical strength to resist the tribulation clouds. Crack crack. Crack crack. Crack crack. Ningyu had fully awakened his body of the war god, so he could resist peak peerless immortal mid-stage tribulation clouds with just his physical strength alone. Not long after, the second wave of tribulation clouds was completely shattered by Ningyu and Di Wentian. Whoosh. The tribulation clouds came in wave after wave. Just as the second wave of tribulation clouds dispersed, the third wave of tribulation clouds arrived in response. The power of the third wave wasn't much greater than the second, but it was much greater in number. Ningyu and Di Wentian were both visibly moved. When facing the first 2 waves of tribulation clouds, they were still able to hold back. However, when dealing with the third wave of tribulation clouds, they didn't dare to hold back in the slightest, and they used their full strength. Rumble. The tribulation clouds continued to descend. Ningyu and Di Wentian were completely immersed in resisting the tribulation clouds. Drip. Drip. Time passed by quickly. In the blink of an eye, half an hour had passed. In this half an hour, both Ningyu and Di Wentian were struck by the tribulation clouds to varying degrees. Fortunately, Ningyu and Di Wentian's combat prowess were extremely high. Even if they were struck by the tribulation clouds, they would be able to recover very quickly. Catcher. After the third wave of tribulation clouds ended, Ningyu and Di Wentian didn't even have the time to rest when the space in front of them broke apart once more. Whoosh. Whoosh. 2 waist-thick tribulation clouds descended from the 9 heavens. Peak peerless immortal. Ningyu was dumbfounded. Di Wentian was dumbfounded. There were only 2 tribulation clouds in the 4th wave. However, both tribulation clouds were as powerful as peak peerless immortals. At his peak, Di Wentian could fight peak peerless immortals. But after being struck by the brilliant Void's alliance leader, his strength had already fallen to late-stage peerless immortals. Therefore, when faced with this tribulation cloud, his eyes were filled with despair. On the other hand, Ningyu. His expression was no better than Di Wentian's. Screw it. At this critical moment, Ningyu activated the body of the war god bloodline to its limits. He used the bloodline and the energy stored in his body to forcefully resist the tribulation cloud that was hurtling towards him. Ningyu was very clear about this. As long as he could withstand this tribulation cloud, it would mean that his great tribulation of the virtual immortal realm was over. His cultivation would also rise to the level of a virtual immortal. Of course, what Ningyu cared about was not the increase in his cultivation, but the tribulation liquid. The tribulation liquid produced during his great tribulation of the ancestral immortal realm was already very terrifying. One could only imagine. How terrifying would the tribulation liquid of the great tribulation of the virtual immortal realm be? Catcher. Even though Ningyu gave it his all, his bones still made cracking sounds when he came into contact with the tribulation cloud, as if they were about to fall apart. Ah! Ningyu raised his head and yelled. He then began to burn his blood essence to increase his combat strength. It was basically impossible for him to withstand the tribulation cloud of the peak peerless immortal level with just the energy in his body and the body of the war god bloodline. Therefore, Ningyu had to burn his blood essence and even his life force. Kai. As he burned his blood essence, Ningyu's aura soared rapidly. In a short period of time, Ningyu's aura had already soared to the late-stage peerless immortal level. Burn again. Ningyu gritted his teeth and immediately began burning his life force. Swoosh. Even after burning his blood essence, Ningyu's appearance did not change much. However, after burning his life force, Ningyu's appearance underwent a drastic change. At first, his hair turned white. Then, his face wrinkled. Crack. Hard work paid off. After Ningyu burned his blood essence and life force, the tribulation cloud he was facing finally cracked. Again, with a savage expression, Ningyu continued to burn his blood essence and life force even faster. Another 2 hours passed just like that. Splat. Only when Ningyu spat out a mouthful of blood did the tribulation cloud finally shatter. Thud. Ningyu, on the other hand, fell backward and fell to the ground. Now's my chance. On the other side, Di Wentian shouted excitedly when he saw Ningyu fall to the ground. Bang. However, Di Wentian had celebrated far too early. He'd barely shouted when the tribulation cloud struck him. Damn it. Helpless, Di Wentian could only give up on Ningyu for now and focus on fighting the tribulation cloud. Di Wentian's strength wasn't considered weak. In fact, from a certain perspective, he was much stronger than Ningyu. After the tribulation cloud scattered, Di Wentian's aura was weak, but he didn't fall to the ground. Ha ha ha. Wiping the blood from the corner of his mouth, Di Wentian threw his head back and laughed maniacally. Ningyu, to think that you would have such a day. As he spoke, Di Wentian moved his feet, walking towards Ningyu step by step. Di Wentian was extremely excited. In fact, he'd already thought of how to deal with Ningyu. He'd refine Ningyu into a puppet and let him order him around all year round, because this was the only way he could vent the hatred in his heart. Voila! However, before Di Wentian could reach Ningyu's side, a gigantic pool of lightning appeared in the air. Lightning tribulation liquid. How intelligent was Di Wentian? The moment the lightning pool appeared, he already knew that it must be the lightning tribulation liquid. Consider yourself lucky. Di Wentian glared at Ningyu fiercely. After that, he stomped on the ground and rushed towards the lightning pool in the air. I'm going to die. As he got closer to the lightning pool, Di Wentian's expression became more and more exaggerated. Gulp. In the end, Di Wentian couldn't help but swallow a mouthful of saliva. There was no other reason. The quality of the lightning tribulation liquid in the lightning pool was several levels higher than the one he'd produced when he ascended to Peerless Immortal. The heavens are on my side. Di Wentian was very excited. According to his estimation, if he could devour the lightning tribulation liquid in the lightning pool, his strength would quickly recover to its peak. In fact, he still had a high chance of breaking through to mid-stage Peerless Immortal. I didn't expect his talent to be so high. Chapter 22:19. As the Prince of the Scythians, Di Wentian grasped an extremely frightening secret art. He could devour the talents of others for his own use. Actually, Ningyu had already grasped this secret art when he was in the lower planes. However, the secret art that Ningyu grasped paled in comparison to Di Wentian's. This was because the secret art that Ningyu grasped could only devour the talents of others. However, the secret art that Di Wentian grasped could devour the cultivation of others. To put it simply, if Di Wentian could devour Ningyu's talents, then his strength would be equivalent to his and Ningyu's combined. Think about it. Ningyu, who had advanced to the virtual immortal realm, had overall strength comparable to a late-stage Peerless Immortal, or even a Peerless Immortal. As for Di Wentian, his overall strength was comparable to a Peerless Immortal. With their combined strength, even if they encountered a half-step Saint Immortal, they could hold their ground. Of course, they could only hold their ground, not defeat. However, this did not affect Di Wentian's excitement. Let me devour the tribulation fluid first. Di Wentian leaped into the lightning pool and devoured the tribulation fluid madly. At the same time, Ningyu had already regained consciousness. As his body was weak and could not muster any strength, Ningyu did not make a sound and pretended to be unconscious. Hong Mo, Di Wentian will definitely come to deal with me later. How confident are you that you can defeat him if you suddenly attack? Ning Yu secretly contacted Hong Mo, wanting to launch a sneak attack on Di Wentian. Not even 10% confidence. Hong Mo shook his head and said helplessly, I have 50% confidence in launching a sneak attack on the current Di Wentian because his strength has decreased greatly. However, once he finishes devouring the tribulation fluid, even if you and I join forces, we will not be able to hurt him at all. Damn it! Ning Yu cursed in his heart. He did not expect that after going through so much trouble to undergo the tribulation, the final benefit would be stolen by Di Wentian. That was the tribulation fluid. I have to do something. Ning Yu's eyes turned as he thought of a countermeasure. Based on the current situation, once Di Wentian swallowed the lightning tribulation liquid and recovered to his peak state, he would definitely die. Oh right. Suddenly, Ning Yu had a thought and immediately took out the leftover materials from the lightning pool and the water moon fan. First, the leftover materials from the lightning pool were tossed into the water moon fan. After that, Ning Yu instructed the Red Devils to take the initiative and attack Di Wentian. Whoosh! The Red Devil did not hesitate. He immediately fused with the Red Devil sword and dashed towards Di Wentian. Initially, Di Wentian was in the midst of devouring the lightning tribulation liquid. But very swiftly after, he sensed a shadow rushing towards him. You really did not faint. Di Wentian abruptly burst out from the pool of lightning. Both of his hands waved about, instantly grabbing onto the hilt of the Red Devil sword. Shio! After grabbing the Red Devil sword, Di Wentian leaped into the air and instantly arrived beside Ning Yu. Originally, I wanted to devour the heavenly tribulation fluid first before dealing with you. Who would have thought that you would seek death yourself? You can't blame me for this. Di Wentian said indifferently. As soon as he finished speaking, Di Wentian raised his right hand and abruptly slapped Ning Yu's head. Boom! Ning Yu's expression changed drastically. Because, he could feel a terrifying devouring energy flowing through Di Wentian's palm into his sea of consciousness. To be able to be devoured by me, consider it your good fortune of 8 lifetimes. Di Wentian sat down cross-legged and began to devour Ning Yu wholeheartedly. As Di Wentian was devouring Ning Yu, he casually sealed the Red Devil sword and tossed it aside. Di Wentian's action gave the Red Devil a great opportunity. Buzz, buzz, buzz. Previously, the Red Devil had devoured the thin cultivator's silvery white flying sword. His cultivation had directly advanced from peak virtual immortal to half-step peerless immortal. Di Wentian's casual seal was naturally not a problem for him. It did not take long for the Red Devil to undo the seal. Hold it. However, just as the Red Devil was about to rescue Ning Yu's words suddenly rang in his ears. Di Wentian wants to devour me, so I'll just go with the flow. Ning Yu calmed down. He had never feared anyone when it came to devouring. Although his aura had fallen to the freezing point, his devouring ability had not weakened in the slightest. In fact, after advancing to early stage virtual immortal, his devouring ability had grown even stronger. Ning Yu decided to keep quiet for now and find out what Di Wentian was up to. Because he discovered that Di Wentian wasn't just devouring his energy. It seemed like he was devouring his talent as well. Why, you're devouring my talent. To avoid arousing Di Wentian's suspicions, Ning Yu pretended to be terrified. Devouring your talent. Di Wentian's lips curled up. Not only do I want to devour your talent, but I also want to devour your strength. Devour strength. Ning Yu was stunned for a moment before shaking his head. That's impossible. At most, you can only devour my energy, not my strength. Ha ha ha. Di Wentian inclined his head and laughed maniacally. In this world, nothing is impossible. In our heavenly devil clan, not everyone can devour the talent and strength of others. Only those with the bloodline of the royal clan are able to do this. I don't believe that there's such a technique. Ning Yu continued to shake his head. You don't believe me? Hehe, it's fine if you don't believe me. When I devour everything from you, you'll naturally choose to believe me. Di Wentian shrugged his shoulders and smiled. Good chance. Seeing Di Wentian's actions, Ningyu's face lit up with joy. He immediately blew the horn to counterattack. What? How is this possible? The sudden change caused Di Wentian's eyes to narrow as his face was filled with disbelief. No matter what, Di Wentian would never have thought that the heavily injured Ningyu's devouring power actually didn't retreat. Instead, it increased by several times. Nothing is impossible. As long as you believe in it in your heart, everything is possible. Ningyu shrugged his shoulders and smiled faintly. Originally, if you devoured the lightning tribulation fluid obediently, I wouldn't be able to do anything to you. But you were foolish and actually came to devour me. Since that's the case, I can only refuse. Swish. At the same time, the red fiend broke free from Di Wentian's seal and charged towards the lightning pool in the distance. Going over together with the red fiend was the water moon fan and the leftover materials of the lightning pool. After a period of time, the lightning pool would disappear. The red fiend's mission was to take away all the lightning tribulation fluid inside before the lightning pool disappeared and store it into the water moon fan. Infuriating. Seeing the red fiend's actions, Di Wentian's entire body was trembling. He knew that he fell into Ningyu's trap. The him now was very regretful. He regretted that he didn't devour the lightning tribulation fluid first but chose to give up halfway and come to devour Ningyu. It was already too late to think about anything. The plan now was to compete in devouring power with Ningyu and see who would win. When on the Heavenly Stars City's arena, his clone lost to the combined forces of Ningyu and the Red Fiend. But now, he might not be defeated. Because the Red Fiend was currently snatching the lightning tribulation fluid and had no time to care about anything else. Therefore, this time, it was him facing off with Ningyu alone. Chapter 22:20. Devour for me. Di Wentian raised his head and roared. The devouring power in his body surged out crazily and entered Ningyu's body through his palm. Facing Di Wentian's frenzied devouring power, Ningyu's expression was calm and indiscernible. In terms of pure devouring power, Ningyu was not any weaker than Di Wentian. In fact, after advancing to the early stage virtual immortal stage, Ningyu's devouring power was even stronger than Di Wentian's. Ningyu was very clear about what he wanted. He wanted to compete with Di Wentian in terms of devouring power while buying time. As long as Hong Mo collected the lightning tribulation fluid, Ningyu would be able to use it to deal with Di Wentian. Damn it! After devouring for a full 10 minutes, Di Wentian was still unable to gain any advantage. Di Wentian could not help but curse. As Ningyu's devouring power was slightly stronger than his, he could only do so after Ningyu retracted his devouring power. Otherwise, he would be trapped here forever. However, Ningyu was no fool. Why would he retract his devouring power? Because in terms of devouring power, Ningyu was slightly stronger than him. At the very least, he had the upper hand. But in terms of combat power, Ningyu could not be mentioned in the same breath as him. Unless Ningyu was an idiot who had lost his mind and lost his mind. Otherwise, he would definitely not retract his devouring power. Drip, drip. As time passed, the energy in Di Wentian's body slowly moved towards Ningyu's body. Although the speed was slow, if this continued, Di Wentian would definitely lose. Fight. Di Wentian naturally would not sit and wait for death. TSK. He started to burn his blood essence and life force to increase his devouring power to the maximum and turn the tables. Poochie. Di Wentian's actions had a very good effect. Under the enhancement of burning his blood essence and life force, his devouring power was instantly strengthened by several times. Ningyu was careless and spat out a mouthful of fresh blood. Hold on. It was a critical moment. Ningyu also burned his life and blood essence, strengthening his devouring power once again. Damn it, just a little bit more. Di Wentian felt like cursing out loud. All was for naught. Just as he was about to succeed, who would have thought that Ningyu would also burn his blood essence and life? Shoo. At this moment, the Red Fiend returned with the water moon fan and the leftover materials from the lightning pool. Red Devil would not attack Di Wentian. Leaving aside the fact that the success rate was extremely low, even if he managed to injure Di Wentian, it wouldn't bring them any benefits at all. If Di Wentian wanted to separate from Ningyu, there were only two ways. The first method was naturally for Ningyu to give up. The second method was to receive an external attack. If the Red Devil attacked Di Wentian, there was a high possibility that it would disrupt the balance between Di Wentian and Ningyu, allowing Di Wentian to break free. Give me the lightning tribulation fluid. Seeing the Red Fiend return, Ningyu's face lit up with joy as he hurriedly said, "Then enter the Red Fiend sword." Although he was happy, Ningyu did not lose his rationality. The Red Fiend's mission had been completed, he could only rely on himself now. If he allowed the Red Fiend to stay, Di Wentian would inevitably take advantage of the situation. Swish. The Red Fiend casually threw the water moon fan and the leftover materials from the lightning pool to Ningyu, then followed Ningyu's instructions and entered the Red Fiend sword. Gulp. Gulp. Right in front of Di Wentian, Ningyu poured the lightning tribulation fluid from the water moon fan into his mouth. TSK TSK. As soon as the lightning tribulation fluid entered his mouth, Ningyu felt his aura skyrocketing. At this rate, it wouldn't be long before Ningyu's strength returned to its peak. How terrifying would Ningyu's strength be at his peak? When he was a half-step virtual immortal, Ningyu's combat strength was comparable to an ordinary mid-stage peerless immortal, or even a late-stage peerless immortal. Now that he was an early-stage virtual immortal, one could imagine that Ningyu's combat strength would at least reach peak late-stage peerless immortal. Ningyu, how about we make a deal? Di Wentian's eyes flickered as he gradually regained his composure. I'll tell you how to devour talent and strength, and you let me go. I'm not an idiot. I can completely devour your memories, Ningyu said coolly. I know you can devour my memories, but you don't know where the other princes are. Di Wentian gritted his teeth. Let me go, and I can trick the princes from the other alliances over. If you devour me, your strength will only increase to peak peerless immortal. If you can devour the princes from the other alliances, your strength will at least reach the saint immortal level. Are you serious? Ningyu raised an eyebrow and stared at Di Wentian with interest. Yes, it's true. As if grasping at straws, Di Wentian hurriedly added, the other princes are all very strong, and they've plundered a lot of resources. If you devour them, you'll obtain a lot of resources. Very tempting. Ningyu took a deep breath. How about this? Let go of your consciousness and let me control you. You. Di Wentian's voice was cold. He made a deal with Ningyu to survive, not to be controlled by Ningyu. Now, Ningyu still wanted to control him. How could he not be angry? Ningyu, don't force me. If you push me too far, I won't let you obtain the devouring method even if I have to self-destruct. Di Wentian said harshly. Self-destruct? I'm sorry, you might have been able to just now, but you don't even have the right to do so now. Ningyu raised his right leg and kicked Di Wentian in the chest. Bang! The immense force directly caused Di Wentian to be flung several feet back. Ha ha ha. Di Wentian wasn't enraged by the kick. Instead, he threw his head back and laughed. I finally broke free from you. I may not be as good as you in terms of devouring power, but in terms of combat strength, even two of you are not my match. Ningyu looked at Di Wentian and shrugged. Is that so? Boom. As soon as he finished speaking, a terrifying aura emanated from Ningyu's body. How is this possible? Di Wentian's eyes widened in disbelief when he sensed the aura emanating from Ningyu. Peak late-stage peerless immortal. Ningyu's aura had reached the terrifying peak late-stage peerless immortal realm. How could Ningyu soar from his weakened state to the peak late-stage peerless immortal realm in just a few dozen seconds? Di Wentian had also devoured some tribulation liquid, but the effects couldn't have been this terrifying. Unless... Did Ningyu have other hidden cards? Oh, I forgot to tell you. Ningyu put away the water moon fan and the leftover materials from the lightning pool and rubbed his nose. With the war god physique awakened to 100% of its bloodline power, its speed of devouring tribulation liquid is many times faster than yours. I don't believe it. Di Wentian roared and charged out. Swoosh. Turning into a blur, Di Wentian punched at Ningyu's head. Although Di Wentian hadn't recovered to his peak, he had devoured tribulation liquid before. His current strength was comparable to a mid-stage peerless immortal. Crack, crack. The result was regrettable. Ningyu's strength had already reached the peak late-stage peerless immortal realm. Against a peak mid-stage peerless immortal like Di Wentian, he naturally defeated him with a single move. Bang! Chapter 22-21. Shua. Ningyu didn't stop. He stomped on the ground and chased after Di Wentian. Hit the snake where it hurts, don't hold back. Di Wentian was the prince of the sky demons. Be it his strength, talent, or trump cards, they were extremely terrifying. If he was given the chance, the consequences would be dire. Therefore, Ningyu dashed out the moment his attack landed. Pa! In an instant, Ningyu appeared in front of Di Wentian. He extended his right hand and slapped Di Wentian's head. Kai Kai! A terrifying devouring force flowed through Ningyu's palm and into Di Wentian's body. Ah! Di Wentian screamed like a pig being butchered. Ningyu, you will die a horrible death. I won't let you off even if I become a ghost. Di Wentian screamed hysterically. Sorry, but you can't even become a ghost in front of me. Ningyu shrugged, and then he increased the devouring force once more. What Ningyu first devoured was not Di Wentian's talent, nor was it Di Wentian's energy. It was Di Wentian's memories. Di Wentian knew how to devour the strength of others. This was what Ningyu really needed. Hey! As he continued to devour, Ningyu frowned more and more. In the end, his expression turned solemn. Di Wentian did know how to devour the strength of others. However, the success rate was extremely low. Di Wentian relied on the fact that he was the prince of the sky demons. Coupled with the fact that he had devoured the Emperor Immortal Pill, his success rate was raised to 60%. Ningyu was different. Ningyu had not devoured the Emperor Immortal Pill, nor did he have the bloodline of a sky demon. If he devoured the strength of others, the success rate was at most 20%. A 20% success rate wasn't high, but it wasn't low either. Ningyu wasn't sure if he should devour or not. It would be fine if he succeeded. But if he failed, only death awaited him. I wonder if the bloodline of the war god physique can help me increase the success rate. Ningyu's face darkened. After pondering for a while, Ningyu finally decided to take a gamble. Actually, the main reason why Ningyu made this decision was because he had obtained some information from Di Wentian's memories. While Di Wentian was attacking the Kuan-Shu Alliance, the other princes were already attacking the Heaven Palace Alliance and the Spiritual Tao Alliance, the Heavenly Palace Alliance, the Spirit Path Alliance, and the Brilliant Void Alliance. These three alliances formed a triangular formation. If any of the alliances were to be attacked, the other two alliances would be able to send reinforcements immediately. When the Brilliant Void Alliance was attacked, the Spirit Tao Alliance and the Heaven Palace Alliance did not send anyone over. From this, one could see the odds were stacked against them. If the Heavenly Palace Alliance and the Spirit Path Alliance were breached, then even if they managed to defend the Kuan-Shu Alliance, the outcome would still be tragic. Hong Mo, protect me. With a flick of his wrist, Ningyu tossed out the red demon sword and all of his transcendent artifacts. Cut off all means of retreat. It was either succeed or die trying. Be careful. Hong Mo could roughly guess what Ningyu was going to do. He brought along Ningyu's transcendent artifacts and retreated to the other side to protect Di Wentian. Who? Ningyu sat down cross-legged and adjusted his mental state to its peak. Then, he activated his spell and started devouring Di Wentian's talent and strength. Ningyu chose to devour the talent first. Because after devouring Di Wentian's talent, he would devour his strength. The success rate would increase from 20% to 30%. This 10% success rate was not to be underestimated. A 10% success rate was enough to shake off countless people. With his talent devoured, Di Wentian once again let out a miserable shriek. But no matter how much Di Wentian struggled, the outcome was already decided. Swoosh! As Ningyu forcefully devoured, A golden cold light was extracted from Di Wentian's body. Without a doubt. This golden cold light was where Di Wentian's talent was. Catcher. Without any hesitation, Ningyu threw the golden cold light into his mouth and chewed on it. Wong wong. As the cold light entered his mouth, Ningyu could clearly feel that his talent was soaring at a terrifying speed. As expected of the Emperor of the Sky Devils. Ningyu was slightly surprised. Strictly speaking, Di Wentian's talent was much higher than his. Not only that, Di Wentian had grasped a large number of alchemy techniques, martial techniques, and mental cultivation techniques. In any case, when compared to Di Wentian, Ningyu was more like a country bumpkin. Back when he was at the immortal spirit realm, Ningyu's talent was still passable. Although it wasn't at the peak, it could be ranked above average. But after he reached the higher planes, Ningyu's talent dropped from above average to below average. All these years, if it wasn't for Ningyu having so many trump cards, it would have been very difficult for him to reach where he was now. Peng. As he continued to devour Di Wentian's talent, Ningyu's sea of consciousness actually underwent some changes. A dull sound rang out. Ningyu's mouth was slightly agape, a little dumbfounded. This was because Ningyu discovered that his cultivation had soared from early-stage virtual immortal to mid-stage virtual immortal. Is there a need to be so exaggerated? A look of disbelief appeared on Ningyu's face. He knew that his talent was much weaker than Di Wentian's, but he didn't expect it to be to this extent. In other words, if he swapped bodies with Di Wentian, then with Di Wentian's talent and his own body, his cultivation could definitely reach mid-stage virtual immortal, or even late-stage virtual immortal. Peng. This was proven by what happened next. When Ningyu completely devoured Di Wentian's talent, his cultivation actually soared another level, from mid-stage virtual immortal to late-stage virtual immortal. The successive increases in cultivation rendered Ningyu speechless. Now, even without devouring Di Wentian's strength, he could still fight against peak peerless immortals. Of course, that wasn't Ningyu's goal. What Ningyu wanted to do was to devour Di Wentian's strength and raise his own to the point where he could fight against a half-step Saint Immortal. Devour. The thought came to mind. Ningyu waved his hands and slapped Di Wentian's head. Buzz buzz. Di Wentian's strength was absorbed into Ningyu's body through Ningyu's palms. Suppress. Ningyu growled and began to suppress the strength that had entered his body. If he didn't suppress it, Ningyu could use Di Wentian's strength to raise his cultivation to peak virtual immortal, or even half-step peerless immortal. However, Ningyu knew very well. In a short time, his cultivation had already soared from half-step virtual immortal to late-stage virtual immortal. If his cultivation continued to rise, his foundation would inevitably become unstable, and his chances of breaking through to peerless immortal in the future would be greatly reduced. Therefore, no matter what, Ningyu had to suppress, and suppress again. Bam! Bam! Muffled sounds kept coming from Ningyu's body. Every muffled sound meant that Ningyu's strength had increased by 10%. Gulp! Hongmo couldn't help but gulp when he saw Ningyu's strength continue to rise. Isn't this a little too terrifying? Di Wentian's face was filled with shock. At this rate, Ningyu's strength would break through the limit and reach the Saint Immortal realm in an hour at most. Drip. Time passed. An hour passed in the blink of an eye. Crack. Just as Ningyu was about to break through to the Saint Immortal realm, something unexpected happened. Chapter 22:22. Who's there? The sudden change made Ningyu's expression change slightly, and he immediately stopped devouring. Although he wouldn't be able to continue devouring once he stopped, Ningyu had no other choice. He could clearly sense that the weakest among the figures that suddenly appeared from the void was a late-stage peerless immortal. There were a total of 8 martial artists. 2 late-stage peerless immortals and 5 peak peerless immortals. The last one had a terrifying cultivation level of a half-step Saint Immortal. There was no way the Hongmo alone could stop them. Therefore, Ningyu had to stop devouring Di Wentian. Di Wentian? The 8 martial artists all looked at Di Wentian, who was beneath Ningyu's feet after they appeared. Among them, the half-step Saint Celestial stage cultivators were slightly surprised. You actually defeated Di Wentian. Looks like you're not weak. The half-step Saint Immortal quickly shifted his gaze from Di Wentian to Ningyu. Let me introduce myself first. I'm Di Mortian, Di Wentian's elder brother. The half-step Saint Immortal shrugged and said, don't be nervous. Although I'm Di Wentian's elder brother, we're competitors. He attacked the Kungsu Alliance, and I attacked the Spiritual Tao Alliance. You killed Di Wentian for me. I have to thank you properly. As they spoke, Di Mortian moved his feet and walked toward Ningyu step by step. Di Mortian seemed to be walking very slowly, but that was not the case. In just a second, he arrived in front of Ningyu and stood still. Open your mind and let me control you. Di Mortian's expression was calm as he said, I've never mistreated my servants. I'm sorry, but what you said is exactly what I wanted to say. Ningyu kicked Di Wentian's corpse away and said calmly, if you open your mind, I'll consider sparing your life. Sparing my life? Di Mortian seemed to have heard the funniest joke in the world. Ha ha ha. He first threw his head back and laughed maniacally before he changed the topic and said coldly, those who don't submit shall die. Swoosh. The word die was uttered. Di Mortian rose from the ground and clenched his right hand into a fist. His fist brought about a violent gale of immortal chi and ruthlessly smashed toward Ningyu's head. Di Mortian's punch was extremely powerful. If Ningyu was unlucky enough to be hit, he would be crippled even if he didn't die. Damn it. At the critical moment, Ningyu stomped on the ground and retreated quickly. Catcher. Ningyu managed to avoid Di Mortian's attack, but the void he was in was not spared. The void was completely torn apart. Why is there such a huge difference in their cultivation? Ningyu was shocked. Di Wentian was only an early-stage peerless immortal. However, Di Mortian's cultivation had reached the shocking half-step Saint Immortal realm. As an early-stage peerless immortal, Di Wentian's overall strength was already comparable to a peak peerless immortal. One could imagine how terrifying Di Mortian's strength was when he was a half-step Saint Immortal. He might even be able to slightly resist a true Saint Immortal expert. Di Mortian was a little surprised. He hadn't expected a late-stage peerless immortal like Ningyu to be able to dodge his attack. One had to know that even a peak peerless immortal expert of the Spirit Tao Alliance couldn't withstand his attack. The 2 late-stage peerless immortals and 5 peak peerless immortals he had brought with him were all experts of the Spirit Tao Alliance. As for his trusted aides, they had been left in the Spirit Tao Alliance to prevent others from taking advantage of them. I'm getting more and more interested in you. Di Mortian's lips curled up. Submit to me, and I can let you rule the Spirit Tao Alliance and become its leader. Ningyu's expression was dark. He had a rough idea of Di Mortian's true strength through his hasty exchange with Di Mortian. Di Mortian was slightly stronger than him. He had devoured Di Wentian's strength, and his cultivation had advanced to late-stage peerless immortal. His strength had improved greatly. It wouldn't be easy for Di Mortian to defeat him. What he was worried about now were the experts behind Di Mortian. If those experts attacked together, he would definitely be defeated. I have to think of a way to draw them away. Ningyu's eyes darted around as he thought to himself. All of a sudden, Ningyu flicked his wrist and took out the Heavenly Tribulation Fluid. Heavenly Tribulation Fluid? Di Mortian noticed the moment Ningyu took out the Heavenly Tribulation Fluid. Peerless Immortal Level Heavenly Tribulation Fluid? Di Mortian frowned slightly. In Di Mortian's opinion, the Heavenly Tribulation Fluid in Ningyu's hand must have been produced when Di Wentian underwent his Peerless Immortal Tribulation. Submit to me, and you can have as much Heavenly Tribulation Fluid as you want, Di Mortian tempted. However, Di Mortian's expression changed slightly before he could finish his sentence. He realized that the Heavenly Tribulation Fluid in Ningyu's hand was fundamentally different from Peerless Immortal Level Heavenly Tribulation Fluid. It seemed. The energy contained in Ningyu's Heavenly Tribulation Fluid was even more terrifying. Could it be Saint Immortal Level Heavenly Tribulation Fluid? At the thought of this, Di Mortian's face was filled with excitement. He was currently a half-step Saint Immortal and had recently been preparing to break through to the Saint Immortal realm. However, how difficult was it to break through to the Saint Immortal realm? Even though he had prepared a lot of resources for it, he still did not dare to try it recklessly. If he had Saint Immortal level Heavenly Tribulation Fluid, the success rate of breaking through to the Saint Immortal realm would increase by at least 10%. The more he thought about it, the more excited Di Mortien was. Hand over the Heavenly Tribulation Fluid and I can spare your life, Di Mortien said to Ning Yu. Here. Ning Yu did not hesitate and threw the Heavenly Tribulation Fluid to Di Mortien. Pa. Di Mortien was a little confused after receiving the Heavenly Tribulation Fluid from Ning Yu. He did not expect Ning Yu to hand over the Heavenly Tribulation Fluid to him so easily. There must be something fishy about it. Di Mortien began to check the Heavenly Tribulation Fluid carefully. A while later, Di Mortien retracted his perception, but his expression was unusually grave. Sometimes. The biggest problem was that he did not find anything wrong with it. There's no problem with the Heavenly Tribulation Fluid. You can consume it without worry. As he was thinking, Ning Yu's words suddenly rang in Di Mortien's ears. Crack, crack, crack. The more Ning Yu said that there was no problem, the more Di Mortien felt that there was something wrong. He clenched his fists so tightly that they cracked. Swoosh. After thinking about it, Di Mortien flicked his wrist and threw half of the Heavenly Tribulation Fluid to Ning Yu. Hurry up and consume it. Now. Di Mortien said coldly, don't play tricks with me. If you don't obediently consume the Heavenly Tribulation Fluid, I don't mind killing your friend. On the other side, the Red Fiend had long been caught by a peak peerless immortal martial artist and could not move at all. You. Ning Yu's expression turned ugly. He pointed at Di Mortien and said, I'm giving you the Heavenly Tribulation Fluid out of goodwill, but you don't trust me? What trust? Hurry up and consume it. Stop talking nonsense. Di Mortien waved his hand and said impatiently. All right. Ning Yu revealed a determined expression. He gritted his teeth and poured all the Heavenly Tribulation Fluid into his mouth. Buzz. Once the Heavenly Tribulation Fluid entered his stomach, Ning Yu hurriedly sat down cross-legged and began to cultivate. While Ning Yu was cultivating, Di Mortien's attention was always on him. Chapter 22-23. The speed at which Ning Yu refined the Heavenly Tribulation Fluid had reached a terrifying level. In just a few seconds, he had refined half of the Heavenly Tribulation Fluid that Di Mortien had tossed to him. Boom. Half of the Heavenly Tribulation Fluid had been refined. Ning Yu's cultivation level had risen from late-stage Essence Immortal to peak late-stage Essence Immortal. He was just half a step away from advancing to peak Essence Immortal. So terrifying? Di Mortien's eyes widened in disbelief when he sensed the rise in Ning Yu's aura. He knew that Ning Yu was strong, but he had not expected him to be this strong. He had thought that Ning Yu's strength was several levels lower than his. However, the strength that Ning Yu had displayed was only one level lower than his. No, I can't let him continue devouring. Di Mortien's expression darkened as he yelled at Ning Yu, stop now, or I'll kill your friend. Stop. The corners of Ning Yu's mouth curled up. What Di Mortien did not know was that while he was thinking, Ning Yu had secretly refined the rest of the Heavenly Tribulation Fluid. In other words, Ning Yu's cultivation level had risen from peak late-stage Essence Immortal to peak Essence Immortal. After advancing to peak Essence Immortal, Ning Yu's combat strength had soared to the point where he could fight Di Mortien. Swoosh. However, Ning Yu did not choose to clash with Di Mortien. Instead, he tore through the void and darted toward the Red Fiend. Saving the Red Fiend was his top priority. Everything else could be put aside for the time being. Damn it. Di Mortien could not help but curse when he saw Ning Yu enter the void. Bam! 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 Ning Yu was very fast. In the blink of an eye, he was beside the Red Fiend. He threw 3 consecutive punches. The 3 peak peerless immortal martial artists beside the Red Fiend were sent flying. Ning Yu did not expend much energy to deal with these peak peerless immortal martial artists. He knew very well that his true opponent was Di Mortian. Swoosh. As expected. Ning Yu had just rescued the Red Fiend when Di Mortian flew out from the void. Di Mortian's fist brought along violent immortal chi waves as he ruthlessly punched toward Ning Yu's head. Kill. It was a critical moment. Ning Yu channeled his immortal chi into the red demon sword and slashed out. Voila! Suddenly, a huge sword light appeared, colliding with Di Mortian's fist light with no way of dodging. Catcher. The two collided, and both dissipated in the world. With this move, Ning Yu and Di Mortian were evenly matched. Nurturing a tiger is inviting calamity. Di Mortian glared at Ning Yu and was extremely furious. Di Mortian was very regretful. He regretted being deceived by Ning Yu and giving Ning Yu tens of seconds of time. It was these tens of seconds that allowed Ning Yu to refine the Thunder Tribulation fluid and advance his cultivation level from late-stage Essence Immortal to peak-stage Essence Immortal. Ning Yu's overall combat power had reached a level where he could contend with him. You guys, go to Stellar Sky City first. Di Mortian's expression was gloomy. He knew very well that Ning Yu had already matured. He would not be able to defeat Ning Yu in a short period of time. Instead of wasting time with Ning Yu here, he might as well send people to Stellar Sky City first and plunder the Kuan Shu Alliance clean. After all, Di Wentian had already been killed. The Kuan Shu Alliance would definitely be leaderless and in chaos. If he sent a few peak-stage peerless immortals over now, wouldn't he be able to easily take control of the Kuan Shu Alliance? Where do you think you're going? Ning Yu took a step forward and stood in front of those peak-stage peerless immortals. On the Stellar Sky City side, only an old man in white had decent strength, but he was only a peak-stage peerless immortal. What would happen if 7 or 8 peak-stage and peak-stage peerless immortals went there at once? Therefore, Ning Yu would never let them go no matter what. Your opponent is me. Di Mortian snorted coldly, then quickly dashed out to fight Ning Yu. Damn it! Ning Yu's expression was extremely ugly. His strength was almost on par with Di Mortian. How could he break out of this situation? Fut. However, just as Ning Yu was feeling helpless, something unexpected happened. The 7 peak-stage peerless immortals who had left not long ago flew back and fell heavily to the ground. Fresh blood spurted from their mouths. In an instant, the 7 peak-stage peerless immortals were all dead. Di Lingtian. The sudden turn of events caused Di Mortian's expression to change drastically. He gritted his teeth. It's not good to be distracted now. Ning Yu didn't care about Di Lingtian at all. He was fighting Di Mortian, and his main mission was to defeat him. Di Mortian's momentary daze gave him an opportunity. Ning Yu would never give up on an opportunity that was hard to come by. The red devil sword in his hand stabbed out quickly and accurately, piercing Di Mortian's chest. Fortunately, Di Mortian dodged at the crucial moment. Otherwise, Ning Yu's sword alone would have been enough to kill Di Mortian. Smack, smack, smack. Several smacking sounds could be heard. Then, a young martial artist appeared out of thin air. Without a doubt. This young martial artist was the Di Lingtian that Di Mortian had mentioned. I'm not too late. The show is just starting. Di Lingtian's lips curled up as he said sinisterly, Di Mortian, I didn't expect you to be unable to defeat a peak virtual immortal martial artist. You're a disgrace to the Skyfians. Di Mortian, stop making sarcastic remarks. Di Mortian said coldly. If it weren't for you, I would have killed Ning Yu long ago. It's all because of you. I spoiled your plans. Di Lingtian was slightly taken aback, then he quickly shook his head. No. You've misunderstood. I didn't mean it earlier. What I'm going to do next is really going to spoil your plans. Swoosh. As soon as he finished speaking, Di Lingtian stomped on the ground and rushed out quickly. Seeing Di Lingtian rush out, Ning Yu's expression changed slightly as he hurriedly retreated. Di Lingtian's target was placed on Di Mortian. After all, Di Lingtian did not know Ning Yu's true battle prowess. In his heart, Di Mortian's threat was far greater than Ning Yu's. Moreover, if he killed Di Mortian, The spiritual Tao Alliance's resources would all belong to him. There were many imperial princes among the Scythians. Every imperial prince required a lot of resources to cultivate. The reason why Di Mortian and Di Lingtian's cultivation was higher than Di Wentian's was because they had defeated many alliances and snatched many resources. Otherwise, how could their cultivation be so much higher than Di Wentian's? It won't be that easy to kill me. Looking at Di Lingtian, who was rushing towards him, Di Mortian did not hesitate to burn his blood essence and attacked with all his might. Fart. However, even though Di Mortian attacked with all his might, he was still unable to block Di Lingtian's attack. Fresh blood spurted out. Di Mortian's aura instantly dropped from half-step divine immortal to freezing point. In comparison, Di Lingtian's aura was still half-step divine immortal. You. How is this possible? Di Mortian's face was filled with disbelief. Because he realized that Di Lingtian had not come in his main body, but a clone. Chapter 22-24. In my dictionary, the word impossible doesn't exist. Di Lingtian's expression was calm, without any emotion. Before he rushed to Tianqing City, he had already taken down several alliances. Among them, there were a few alliances that were ranked at the top among the alliances formed by the high-class dominions. After taking down those alliances, he had gained a lot of benefits. His cultivation had advanced from the peak of the peerless immortal stage to the saint celestial stage. So what if your main body has advanced to the saint celestial stage? Don't forget, this is just a doppelganger of yours. Di Mortian's expression was cold as he said in a low voice, "The mountains will not change, and the rivers will continue to flow. We will meet again." Swoosh. As soon as he finished speaking, Di Mortian turned into an afterimage and dashed away at a terrifying speed. Di Mortian was not a fool. He knew that with his current mental state, it was almost impossible for him to defeat Di Lingtian's clone. In addition, there was Ningyu eyeing him like a tiger watching its prey. If he stayed, he would only die. Rather than staying and waiting for death, it was better to leave as soon as possible. Leave? Can you leave now? Seeing Di Mortian fly away, Di Lingtian's lips curled into a smile. He said sinisterly, "No one can run away if I, Di Lingtian, want to kill them." Swoosh. The next moment, Di Lingtian flicked his wrist, and a cold gleam flew out of his sleeve. Pest. The cold gleam was so fast that it arrived in front of Di Mortian almost in an instant. Damn it. Di Mortian could not help but curse when he saw the cold gleam that suddenly appeared in front of him. To him, the hasty exchange just now had seriously injured him. If he was hit by Di Lingtian's cold gleam again, even if he did not die, he would be crippled. Therefore, at this critical moment, Di Mortian thought of Ningyu. He raised his head and shouted, "Ningyu, I'll hold Di Lingtian back for you. Hurry up and kill him." Swoosh. As expected, Di Mortian's words affected Di Lingtian to a certain extent. The power of the attack that was originally enough to kill Di Mortian was reduced by half. Because Di Lingtian had to guard against Ningyu and ensure that Ningyu would not make a move against him. The Di Lingtian at his peak naturally did not fear Ningyu. However, it was only his clone that had come this time. Furthermore, he had exhausted too much of his energy when fighting against Di Mortian earlier. In his current state, if he were to be ambushed by Ningyu, he would most likely die. Who? Di Lingtian weakened the power of his attack, giving Di Mortian a chance to catch his breath. Kacha. However, Di Mortian knew very well that he did not have much time left. Once Di Lingtian came back to his senses, he would surely pursue him relentlessly. This was because Ningyu had retreated far to the back and had no intention of participating at all. Di Mortian stretched out his hands and used all of his strength to tear open the void and enter it. Courting death. Seeing Di Mortian enter the void, Di Lingtian was so angry that his entire body was shaking. He waved his hands and a small whirlpool appeared in front of him. Buzz. A terrifying suction force shot out from the small whirlpool and tunneled into the void where Di Wentian had disappeared. Poochie. In an instant, Di Mortian was sucked out and he fell heavily onto the ground. His aura was rapidly decreasing. Who? After defeating Di Mortian, Di Lingtian revealed a look of relief. Swoosh swoosh swoosh. Di Lingtian did not choose to kill Di Mortian. He waved his hands and directly sealed Di Mortian. Shaw shaw. After doing all this, Di Lingtian moved and came in front of Ningyu. He said calmly, I have a question to ask you and I hope that you can answer truthfully. Ningyu shrugged and did not deny it. The current Ningyu was full of confidence. When Di Mortian and Di Lingtian were fighting, he had already recovered to his peak state. Di Mortian was captured and Di Lingtian was only here with a clone. Moreover, his mental state was not at its peak. How could he fight him? Ningyu's actions caused Di Lingtian to frown. He was a little angry. But Di Lingtian didn't say anything. He asked solemnly, did you kill Di Wentian or was it Di Mortian? Is that important? Ningyu said calmly, Mph, you just need to answer who killed Di Wentian. The rest has nothing to do with you. Di Lingtian snorted coldly and said furiously. Ningyu swept a glance at Di Mortian who was in the distance. After that, he spoke calmly, Di Wentian was killed by me. It really was you. Di Lingtian was delighted and then he said solemnly, hand over the method to devour strength and I can spare your life. The method to devour strength wasn't universal. Even though Di Mortian and Di Wentian were the princes of the sky demons, they didn't know how to devour other people's strength. Among the many princes, only Di Wentian knew how to devour other people's strength and talent. Therefore, the moment Di Lingtian saw Di Wentian's corpse, he immediately made a decision. He had to get his hands on the method to devour other people's strength and talent. That way, he could devour Di Mortian and increase the strength of his main body. Even if he couldn't break through to the mid-stage Saint Celestial stage, his strength would increase by about 10%. One shouldn't underestimate the increase in strength of one level. As long as his strength increased by another level, he would be able to fight with the alliance formed by the Super Dominions. The difference between the Super Dominions and the high-class Dominions was even more terrifying than the difference between the high-class and low-class Dominions. The alliance of several high-class Dominions couldn't even compare to the alliance of a single Super Dominions. You want the method to devour strength. Ningyu raised his eyebrows and looked at Di Lingtian with interest. He said calmly, I did get the method from Di Wentian, but you're not qualified to make me say it. Not qualified? Di Lingtian's face darkened completely. He hadn't fought with Ningyu before, so he didn't know Ningyu's true combat strength. But he wasn't a fool. Ningyu, who could kill Di Wentian and fight Di Mortian, was definitely not weak. Since you won't say it, I'll beat you until you do. A cold light shot out from Di Lingtian's eyes. He stomped his feet on the ground and charged out. Facing Di Lingtian who was speeding over, Ningyu did not make much of a reaction. Red Demon Sword. With a flick of his wrist, Ningyu took out the Red Demon Sword. He injected his immortal chi into the Red Demon Sword, and Ningyu stabbed forward. Crack! The void split apart, and a sword ray as thick as a person's waist slashed at Di Lingtian. Petty tricks. Di Lingtian reached into his robes and took out a black flying sword. A peerless immortal flying sword? Ningyu was slightly surprised to see the flying sword in Di Lingtian's hand. He could clearly sense that the black flying sword had reached the mid-stage peerless immortal level. It was obvious. The black flying sword was the highest level Ningyu had ever seen. Be it the Thin Cultivator's silver flying sword or the Water Moon Fairy's aquaselenic fan, they were both early-stage peerless immortals. How could Ningyu not be shocked when Di Lingtian took out a mid-stage peerless immortal flying sword? But that was all. Chapter 22-25. Di Lingtian was already at the end of his tether. Even though he took out a mid-stage peerless immortal flying sword, it was still difficult for him to fight against him. After all, he had been waiting for Di Lingtian and Di Mortian to recover his strength to its peak state while they were fighting. Crack! Instantly, Di Lingtian waved his black flying sword and slashed out a sword ray that collided with Ningyu's sword ray. The two collided. A crisp sound rang out. Then, the The sword ray that Di Lingtian slashed out shattered, while the sword ray that Ningyu slashed out continued to rush out. Damn it. This change was clearly out of Di Lingtian's expectations. Cursing, Di Lingtian immediately decided to escape. As long as there's life, there's hope. He had already confirmed that Ningyu had mastered the method to devour strength. What he had to do next was to wait for his main body to free up and then come over to subdue Ningyu. As for his clone, it was better for him to retreat for the time being. After all, the loss of a clone would affect the main body greatly. Leave me. Do you think you can leave in front of me? Ningyu scoffed and raised his speed to the limit, appearing in front of Di Lingtian in the blink of an eye. Boom. He clenched his right fist. All the immortal qi in his body was injected into his fist. Ningyu punched out and landed right on Di Lingtian's heart. Bam! A muffled sound was heard. Like a kite with a broken string, Di Lingtian flew backward in a straight line. He only stopped when he hit the ground. Fart! Di Lingtian spat out a mouthful of blood. His aura dropped from half-step Saint Immortal to virtual immortal. Moreover, it continued to descend. How dare you kill me? Although his aura had dropped, Di Lingtian still said coldly, my main body is not far from here. If you kill me, you should know the consequences. Smack. The Red Fiend scurried out of the Red Fiend sword and slapped Di Lingtian on the cheek, causing his cheek to swell up. You dare to show off when you're defeated? Hong Mo curled his lips and said disdainfully, from the moment you appeared, your fate was already decided. You, after being slapped by Hong Mo, Di Lingtian's eyes widened and his face was filled with disbelief. His strength was above average even among the martial monarch's sons. Now that he had been slapped by a sword spirit, how could he not be angry? Hehe, Ningyu, why don't you give him to me? Chuckling, the red demon looked at Ningyu and said fawningly, I have absolute confidence that I can ascend to peerless immortal realm after devouring him. Don't think about it. I want to keep Di Lingtian. Ningyu shook his head and said, Di Lingtian's main body is a saint immortal. I can find out where his main body is from him and avoid some trouble. Making use of Di Lingtian's clone, Ningyu could completely determine Di Lingtian's main body's location. This way, he could at least avoid meeting Di Lingtian's main body prematurely. Ningyu was not an arrogant person. Even though his strength had increased a lot, he still had no chance of winning against the Saint Immortal Di Lingtian's main body. Then, give Di Lingtian to me. Hesitating, Hong Mo opened his mouth slightly. Don't even think about Di Lingtian. Ningyu waved his hand and said, I was interrupted when I was devouring Di Wentian. For the next period of time, I can use devouring Di Lingtian to replenish my strength. Strength. Ningyu urgently needed to raise his strength now. As the saying went, one cannot catch a wolf without risking the child. When he first devoured Di Wentian's strength, his success rate was only about 30%. But now that his strength had soared to half-step Saint Immortal level, his success rate could reach 50% if he used a secret technique to devour others' strength. 50% success rate was worth a gamble. All right, I'll protect you. Rolling his eyes, Hong Mo said. The Red Fiend was not an unreasonable person. He knew that giving Di Lingtian to Ningyu was much more useful than leaving him. It's not safe here. Let's find a safe place first. Ningyu looked around and his body flashed. He brought Di Mortian and Di Lingtian with him and flew into the distance. There had just been a few battles here and if nothing went wrong, experts would rush over soon. If they stayed any longer, there might be unnecessary trouble. Wang. As expected. Just as Ningyu and Hong Mo left, a young man dressed in blue appeared. The aura of a sky demon? The young man sniffed and then frowned, muttering, did other emperors appear? He did not stay for long. The young man stayed for a minute before he tore open the void and entered. If Ningyu was still here, he would definitely notice that although the young man's cultivation was not at the Saint Immortal realm, he was at the peak of half-step Saint Immortal realm. He was just a step away from advancing to the Saint Immortal realm. Of course. Ningyu did not know anything about the young man. At that moment, Ningyu and Hong Mo were rushing towards Skystar City at full speed. Initially, Ningyu wanted to find a place to refine Di Lingtian, but on second thought, he wanted to return to Skystar City to take a look. After all, the white-robed old man was fighting two peak peerless immortal sky demons alone while Aqua Moon Fairy and crazed God True Lord were fighting. The situation was not looking good. At full speed, Ningyu, the Red Devil, and the others only took half an hour to arrive in front of Heavenly Star City. In front of Heavenly Star City, Ningyu couldn't help but frown when he saw the tightly shut city gates and the empty city walls. Ningyu had a bad feeling. Using his powerful senses, Ningyu did not enter Skystar City immediately. Instead, he began to probe. Let's go. As soon as his senses reached Skystar Plaza, Ningyu's expression changed drastically. Because in the skies above the Heavenly Star Plaza, there was a layer of barrier, blocking his perception. He remembered clearly that before he lured Di Wentian away, a huge battle had erupted in Skystar Plaza. Logically speaking, if the Kuan-Shu Alliance had won, they would not have set up a barrier to block his senses. There was only one explanation for the barrier's appearance. Someone else had appeared and joined the battle. Therefore, without any hesitation, Ningyu's figure flashed and he flew towards Skystar Plaza. However, a voice sounded in Ningyu's ears as soon as he entered Skystar City. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Immediately after, three figures dashed out from the Heavenly Star City's tower and blocked the path of Ningyu and the Red Devil. Halt! The three cultivators were not very old, all in their 20s or 30s. One of them, a young cultivator in green, said in a low voice, "We have taken over the Kuan-Shu Alliance. Please report your names." Taken over by you. Ningyu's worries eased a little when he heard the cultivator in green. No matter who took over, at least his parents, the Dark Emperor, and Ninglu were fine. We're the ones asking questions. Chapter 22-26. You. Being scolded by a martial artist, Hongmo's expression instantly turned ugly. However, just as Hongmo was about to flare up, Ningyu patted his shoulder, signaling him not to get angry. Although Ningyu was also very dissatisfied with the attitude of the green-clothed martial artist and the green-clothed martial artist, it was not good to start a conflict before he figured out the situation. After all, the Dark Emperor and his parents were all in Tianxing City, so Ningyu could not joke around with their safety. "We are from Tianxing City," Ningyu replied. "People from Tianxing City?" The green-clothed martial artist raised his brows and said sinisterly, "If you say you are from Tianxing City, then you are from Tianxing City. Take out the evidence. If you don't take out the evidence today, no one can leave. This should be considered as evidence." Ningyu had already expected that the green-clothed martial artist would make things difficult for him, so with a flick of his wrist, he took out the Water Moon Alliance's core disciple token and threw it out. Pa. The green-clothed martial artist caught the token and looked at it before casually throwing it on the ground. Ding. When the token came into contact with the ground, it let out a crisp sound. This can't be considered evidence. The green-clothed martial artist shrugged his shoulders and said indifferently, "I'll give you one more chance. If you can't take out the evidence, I can only beat you up." Towards the green-clothed martial artist's difficulties, the other two young martial artists crossed their arms in front of their chests and stared at Ningyu and Hongmo with interest, as if they were watching a show. Humph. Ningyu finally couldn't take it anymore. He snorted coldly and took a step forward. He clenched his right hand into a fist and suddenly punched the green-clothed martial artist's chest. Bang! In an instant, the green-clothed martial artist was knocked back and fell heavily to the ground. Kacha! Kacha! A crisp sound rang out. Several of the green-clothed martial artist's ribs were broken on the spot. "You're courting death." When the other two martial artists saw that the green-clothed martial artist had been defeated, they were enraged and roared as they charged at Ningyu. Bang! Bang! However, this time, Ningyu did not make a move. The one who made a move was the Red Devil. The Red Fiend rushed out and kicked twice. In an instant, the two martial artists were kicked in the chest. "Bring it to the Heavenly Star Plaza." Ningyu stomped on the ground, His body turned into an afterimage and disappeared. The Red Fiend grabbed the three warriors who were like dead dogs and followed closely behind Ningyu. Meanwhile, Heavenly Star Plaza, on top of the three huge arenas. The arena was already packed with people. The only difference was that the people on the three arenas were clearly different. Peerless Immortals and above were assigned to the leftmost ring. Cultivators between the virtual immortal and peerless immortal realms were in the middle of the arena. Martial artists between the ancestral immortal and virtual immortal realms were on the right side of the arena. In the attic, there were more than a dozen martial artists in their 20s or 30s. As for the other warriors, they all stayed in the square. The alliance formed by these superior weaves is truly weak. At the head of the attic, a young martial artist dressed in embroidered robes scanned the three arenas. Not even a single saint immortal has appeared. To the left of the cultivator in embroidered robes, a martial artist with a scar on his forehead pursed his lips and said disdainfully, "I thought I could get something out of this. Who would have thought that I wouldn't even get a fart out of it?" To the right of the cultivator in embroidered robes, a beautiful woman said, "How great is the difference between superior and superior weaves? The alliance formed by the superior weaves is nothing compared to the superior weaves. In my opinion, the purpose of their existence is to be cannon fodder for us superior weaves." "Hee, I agree." The scarred martial artist chuckled. "If we capture more martial artists as cannon fodder this time, we'll have fewer casualties in the tyrant weave." Scar. At that moment, the cultivator in embroidered robes pointed at the aquaselenic fairy on the left arena. "Go and bring that woman over. You have a good eye, young lord." The scarred martial artist gave the cultivator in embroidered robes a thumbs up. Then, his figure flashed and he rushed to the arena on the left. Seeing the scarred martial artist rushing over, the expressions of the Killer God's son and the brilliant Void Alliance master changed drastically. They knew the scarred martial artist's intentions very well, but at that moment, they had already been crippled of their cultivation and could not exert any strength at all. TSK, this little girl is indeed devastatingly beautiful. The scarred martial artist quickly arrived at the arena. He first stared at the aquaselenic fairy, then the corners of his mouth curled up. He smiled evilly. "You're lucky. If you follow our young lord, you'll definitely have a good life and do whatever you want." P2E. The aquaselenic fairy used all her strength to spit and said fiercely, "Even if I die, I'll never compromise." "Die." The scarred martial artist easily dodged the aquaselenic fairy's spit and said sinisterly, "In front of me, you don't even have the right to die." Slap. As soon as he finished speaking, the scarred martial artist grabbed the aquaselenic fairy's shoulder and flew toward the attic. Very quickly, the scarred martial artist brought the aquaselenic fairy to the attic. Not bad. The embroidered robed martial artist's eyes wandered around the aquaselenic fairy's body for a while, then nodded in satisfaction and said, "I didn't expect to find ice crystals here." "Ice crystals?" The scarred martial artist's eyes widened as he pointed at the aquaselenic fairy and said in surprise, "Gudong, young master, you said she's an ice crystal?" While they were talking, the scarred martial artist couldn't help but swallow a mouthful of saliva. The reason why the scarred martial artist lost his composure when he heard that the aquaselenic fairy was an ice crystal was because the ice crystal was extremely special. Using an ice crystal as a cauldron could double one's talent. How terrifying would it be to double one's talent? Humph! Isn't it just an ice crystal? At the side, the beautiful woman coldly snorted and said sourly, "I still have the cold poison body." Fart. Hearing the beautiful woman's words, the scarred martial artist laughed out loud. The cold poison body was comparable to the ice crystal. The difference between the two was worlds apart. "All of you, shut up." The embroidered robed martial artist's face turned cold as he said in a low voice, "Go and put all the ancestral immortal and above martial artists into the space treasures. In 3 hours, we will head to the other upper-tier territory alliance. We will complete the mission." The dozen martial artists in the pavilion all patted their chests and promised. Voila! Next. These martial artists all took their space treasures and rushed out. As for the embroidered robed martial artist, He looked at the aquaselenic fairy sinisterly and smiled faintly. Be my cauldron and cooperate with me. After it is done, I can spare your life. Don't even think about it. The aquaselenic fairy said angrily. The aquaselenic fairy knew what a cauldron meant. To make her the cauldron of the embroidered robed martial artist. Unless he killed her. In front of me, it's not up to you. The embroidered robed martial artist shook his wrist and took out the cauldron. Wung wung. With a thought, the cauldron gradually grew larger. Go in. The embroidered robed martial artist grabbed the aquaselenic fairy and threw her into the cauldron. I will let you enjoy the joyful reunion powder in the cauldron first, then I will go in. Chapter 22-27. He had done many things like capturing people to be his cauldrons. This kind of dirty things played a big role in his current achievements. It was appropriate to describe him as someone who had seen countless people. Get in. The scarred martial artist, the beautiful woman, and the dozen or so experts from the tyrant destruction we've all took out spatial treasures and started to put people in the arena. Any martial artist above the ancestral immortal level was their target. The tyrant destruction weave was a super weave. Recently, they had been fighting with the otherworldly demons. Although the tyrant destruction weave was vast and had many experts, the otherworldly demons were not to be trifled with. The one fighting against the tyrant destruction weave was a top force among the otherworldly demons. In order to resist the attack of that top force, the tyrant destruction weave sent out many martial artists to plunder cannon fodder. Unfortunately, it was a coincidence. The brilliant Void Alliance became one of their targets. Damn it! On the right side of the arena, the Dark Emperor and Ning Lu cursed softly when they saw everyone being taken into spatial treasures. They had been cultivating in the Water Moon Alliance for a while. With the large amount of resources that Ning Yu had given them, their cultivation had already broken through to the ancestral immortal level. And ancestral immortals were qualified to be cannon fodder for the tyrant destruction weave. You too, come here. At this moment, the scarred martial artist pointed at the Dark Emperor and Ning Lu. Give me your storage rings. Swish. Hearing the scarred martial artist mention the storage rings, the Dark Emperor and Ning Lu's expressions changed. When Ning Yu had participated in the Brilliant Void Conference, he had given them the storage rings. Now that Ning Yu had not returned, if they lost the storage rings, how would they explain it to Ning Yu? What are you waiting for? The scarred martial artist said impatiently, kneel. The next moment, the scarred martial artist unleashed his aura, pressing down on the Dark Emperor and Ning Lu. Crack crack. Being suppressed by the scarred martial artist's aura, the Dark Emperor and Ning Lu's knees made cracking sounds. Oh! Seeing that the Dark Emperor and Ning Lu did not kneel, the scarred martial artist raised his eyebrows in surprise. For two ancestor immortal level martial artists to be able to withstand his oppressive aura was something that he was extremely surprised about. I didn't expect to find something extra here. The scar-faced cultivator's lips curled up into a smile as he said in an awe-inspiring tone, I originally intended to let you live until we reached the tyrant destruction weave, but since you are so stubborn, I can only refine you all into puppets. As soon as the word go fell, the scarred martial artist turned into an afterimage and instantly rushed out. Kai Kai. The scarred martial artist's speed was very fast. In virtually a blink of an eye, he arrived in front of the Dark Emperor and Ning Lu. He clenched his fists and punched out. The scarred martial artist's two punches were extremely powerful. The Dark Emperor and Ning Lu were only ancestral immortals. Even if they were peak ancestral immortals, virtual immortals, or peerless immortals, they wouldn't be a match for the scarred cultivator. The scarred cultivator's cultivation had reached the astonishing peak peerless immortal realm. Catcher. It was a critical moment. The space beside Dark Emperor and Ning Lu suddenly broke apart, and a young martial artist appeared. Who? The sudden appearance of the martial artist caused the scarred martial artist's expression to change slightly as he shouted in a deep voice. The scarred martial artist's perception was very sharp. With his keen senses, he could naturally tell that the young martial artist was very strong. Ning Yu. The scarred martial artist didn't recognize the young martial artist, but the Dark Emperor and Ninglu did. In truth, the two of them had noticed Ningyu as soon as he'd appeared out of thin air. The moment they saw Ningyu, their first thought was to get Ningyu to leave as soon as possible. However, Ningyu discreetly shot them a look, causing them to give up on trying to persuade him. "You're courting death." The scarred martial artist's expression turned cold. He clenched his right fist and punched out. Catcher. In an instant, the void in front of Ningyu broke apart. Catcher. At the critical moment, Ningyu punched out unhurriedly. A crisp cracking sound rang out. Like a kite with a broken string, the scarred martial artist was sent flying backwards in a perfectly straight line. Bang! The scarred martial artist only stopped when his body hit the ground. Whoosh! The sudden change caused the other martial artists from the Tyrant Destruction Dominion to immediately stop what they were doing in their arenas. Capture him alive. Aside from these people, even the cultivator in embroidered robes in the pavilion scolded with a cold expression. Voila! Upon hearing the embroidered-robed martial artist's orders, a dozen or so martial artists from the Tyrant Destruction Weave immediately rushed out, roaring as they charged towards Ningyu. "Humph! You're seeking death." Ningyu snorted coldly as he looked at the dozens of cultivators charging towards him. He waved his hands repeatedly. Swish, swish, swish. Several palm prints swept out. Although he had yet to devour the Sky Emperor, Ningyu's strength had already reached the peak of the half-step Saint Immortal Realm. He was only half a step away from reaching the Saint Immortal Realm. Dealing with peak peerless immortals in the Tyrant Weave was a piece of cake. Of course, Ningyu did not choose to kill anyone from the Tyrant Destruction Weave. For him, he had yet to figure out the specifics of the situation. Before he did, Ningyu's plan was to keep them under control. Ningyu was well aware of this. The dozen or so cultivators charging at him were just small fries. The truly powerful ones were in the pavilion. In the pavilion. The cultivator in embroidered robes raised an eyebrow, a little surprised. The warrior in brocade clothes didn't expect that there would be someone as powerful as Ningyu in a high-class alliance like the Kuanshu Alliance. In his opinion, Ningyu's cultivation had reached the half-step Saint Immortal Realm. As the cultivator pondered, the dozen or so Tyrant Destruction Weave martial artists he'd brought with him, including the Peak Peerless Immortal Scarface and the beautiful Peak Peerless Immortal Lady, all fell to the ground like dead dogs. One move. With just one move, Ningyu had defeated all the cultivators he'd brought with him. Even he was shocked by this level of combat strength. However, despite his shock, the cultivator wasn't too worried. He was very confident in his own strength. Who is it? Ningyu, it's Ningyu. When did Ningyu's strength become so strong? Who cares? Ningyu saved us anyway. Cheers erupted in the Skystar Plaza when they saw the dozen or so cultivators defeated in an instant. Some of them knew Ningyu, while others didn't know Ningyu. But whether they knew him or not, they were all very grateful to Ningyu. After all, they weren't Ningyu. They had to be stored in spatial treasures and brought to the Tyrant Destruction Weave. Ningyu, go save Goddess Shueyu. In the arena, Song Qing hurriedly shouted at Ningyu, Goddess Shueyu is in that cultivator's cauldron. It'll be too late if we're late. Swoosh. Following Song Qing's gaze, Ningyu looked at the attic. As expected, there was a gigantic cauldron in the pavilion. Beside the cauldron was a cultivator in embroidered robes. Half-step Saint Immortal. Peak. Ningyu's expression was solemn when he sensed the cultivator's aura. He realized that the cultivator's cultivation wasn't much weaker than Empyrean Demon at his peak. Chapter 22-28. You're very strong. The cultivator raised an eyebrow when he saw Ningyu looking at him. He complimented Ningyu, then changed the subject. But you're still lacking compared to me. Because of your stupidity, everyone in Heavenly Star City has to die. Boom. The word die was uttered. A horrifying aura instantly surged out from the cultivator in embroidered robes, soaring into the sky. Hiss. Feeling the aura emitted by the embroidered-clothed cultivator, the crowd, who were originally excited about Ningyu defeating the scarred cultivator, immediately sucked in a breath of cold air. Half-step Saint Immortal. The cultivator's aura had reached the realm of half-step Saint Immortal. Although Ningyu had easily defeated the scarred cultivator and the dozen peerless immortals from the tyrant-dominator domain, the difference between a peerless immortal and a half-step Saint Immortal was as vast as the heaven. It was no exaggeration. Even 10 peak peerless immortals wouldn't be a match for a half-step Saint Immortal. Seeing the terrified expressions of the people in the plaza, the cultivator in embroidered robes smirked, expressing his satisfaction. Next, he retracted his aura and said calmly, "The heavens have the virtue of cherishing life, and I'm not a bloodthirsty person. How about this? As long as Ningyu comes over and kowtows to me a few times, I can pretend that nothing has happened." Swoosh. Hearing the provocative words of the cultivator in embroidered clothes, everyone in the Heavenly Star Plaza shifted their gazes to Ningyu. In fact, some people who were afraid of death began to murmur in a low voice. It's all Ningyu's fault. If not for him, the cultivator wouldn't be so furious. That's right, the cultivator intended to let us go, but Ningyu interfered and pushed us into a bottomless abyss. I strongly urge Ningyu to submit to the cultivator. We must. Our fates can't be in Ningyu's hands. At first, the cultivator's mutterings were still very soft. But as time went on, their voices grew louder. In the end, they even cursed Ningyu's friends. Coward, kill. The Red Fiend's expression was cold as he clenched his right fist and attacked. Pu. The Red Devil was ruthless. In an instant, dozens of people who were clamoring were killed. Hiss. The Hong Mo's domineering attack silenced the entire Heavenly Star Plaza. Humph. Whoever dares to spout nonsense again, don't blame me for being impolite. Red Fiend snorted coldly. Against such heartless people, the Red Fiend's idea was to kill them all. If it wasn't for the lack of time, he would have killed them one by one without letting any of them go. Sometimes, people were just so cheap. When others helped you, you would be deeply grateful to them and even want to repay them with your body. However, once others lose their usefulness, you'll hit them when they're down and say a lot of nasty things. When dealing with such despicable people, one should not let a single one of them off. Kill them all. Whoosh. Ningyu's gaze swept across the crowd, and his figure flashed. In the blink of an eye, he appeared in the pavilion and met the embroidered clothed cultivator's gaze. I admit that you're very courageous. The embroidered clothed cultivator crossed his arms in front of his chest and said coolly, on the account that your strength is passable, I'll give you 10 minutes to consider. After 10 minutes, tell me whether you choose to submit or choose death. You're stalling for time. Ningyu's expression was calm, not carrying any joy or anger as he said, let Fairy Watermoon go and I can spare your life. Ningyu's words made the embroidered clothed cultivator's expression change slightly. He was indeed stalling for time. Because the strength that Ningyu displayed earlier made his heart somewhat palpitate. In order to be able to defeat Ningyu, he quietly swallowed a medicinal pill. As long as he could refine the medicinal pill, his strength could double. The embroidered clothed cultivator was very confident. Once his strength could double, then he would surely be able to win easily against Ningyu. But he did not expect that all this was seen through by Ningyu. Humph. Fairy Watermoon is in my hands. If you want to save her, you'd better surrender obediently. The embroidered clothed cultivator pointed to the cauldron beside him and coldly snorted. So what if you know that I'm stalling for time? I've caught your weakness, you have no other choice. Is that so? Ningyu raised his eyebrows. In the next moment, his figure suddenly rushed out, and his fist brought along a violent immortal wind as it ruthlessly smashed towards the embroidered clothed cultivator. Damn it! Looking at Ningyu who was rushing towards him, the embroidered clothed cultivator could not help but curse in his heart. He wanted to reach out to grab the cauldron, but he was worried that Ningyu would succeed in a sneak attack. In desperation, he could only inject immortal chi into his fist, and with a backhand punch, it collided with Ningyu's fist. Bang! The two collided. The embroidered clothed cultivator retreated several feet. On the other hand, Ningyu stood on the spot and did not move at all. With this move, the difference in strength between the two was obvious. Open! Ningyu's right fist turned into a palm, and he suddenly slapped the cauldron. Crack! A crisp sound was heard. The huge cauldron instantly cracked. My cauldron. Looking at the cracked cauldron, the embroidered clothed cultivator's eyes widened, and his face was filled with anger. This cauldron was his lifeblood. Using this cauldron, his cultivation could soar all the way to the peak of the half-step Saint Immortal realm. Now that the cauldron was destroyed, how could he not be angry? However, although he was angry, the embroidered clothed cultivator did not dare to forcefully launch a sneak attack on Ningyu. He was waiting for the elixir in his body to be refined. Therefore, even if the cauldron was destroyed, he could only pretend to be angry. Ningyu. After coming out of the cauldron, Water Moon Fairy saw Ningyu at first glance. Her face was filled with surprise. Why are you here? When she was captured and put into the cauldron, Water Moon Fairy was already prepared to commit suicide. After all, she was still chaste and could not be tainted by the embroidered clothed cultivator. However, the embroidered clothed cultivator added the joyous reunion powder in the cauldron, causing her body to go limp, and she did not even have the strength to commit suicide. Who would have thought? At her most desperate moment, Ningyu suddenly appeared and saved her by shattering the cauldron. She would never forget that feeling for the rest of her life. Joyous reunion powder? Ningyu could not help but frown when he saw Water Moon Fairy's flushed face and her body trembling. Ningyu had some understanding of the effects of the joyous reunion powder. Anyone who was poisoned by the joyous reunion powder had to have intercourse within a specified time. Otherwise, the consequences would be unimaginable. There's still half an hour, I can make it. After placing his right hand on Water Moon Fairy's forehead and sensing for a moment, Ningyu's expression eased up slightly. Hong Fiend. Turning around and waving at Hong Fiend, Ningyu said, "Give me the Red Fiend sword." Swish. Hong Fiend understood. With a flick of his wrist, he threw the Red Fiend sword to Ningyu. "Go in and hide for a while. I will find the antidote for you within half an hour." Ningyu opened the Red Fiend sword and threw Water Moon Fairy inside. "You need the antidote?" At this moment. Chapter 22-29. Crack. While they were talking, the martial artist in embroidered clothes threw the blue jade bottle into his mouth and chewed it into pieces. "You." Seeing that, Ningyu's expression turned extremely ugly. "What can you do to me?" The martial artist in embroidered clothes smirked and said coldly, "The antidote has completely fused with me. No matter how strong you are, you won't be able to get it. Don't worry, I'll kill you and refine the antidote." Ningyu took a deep breath and tried to calm himself down. Ha ha ha. The martial artist in embroidered clothes seemed to have heard the funniest joke in the world. He threw his head back and laughed wildly, then said disdainfully, "To tell you the truth, my current strength has reached a level that you can only look up to." Rumble. As soon as he finished speaking, a terrifying aura shot out from the martial artist in embroidered clothes and soared into the sky. Saint Immortal? All the martial artists in the heavenly star square were dumbfounded when they sensed the aura that the martial artist in embroidered clothes exuded. They were at a loss. The martial artist in embroidered clothes earlier was only a half-step Saint Immortal. Why was he at the Saint Immortal realm now? Shouldn't one go through the Saint Immortal tribulation from a half-step Saint Immortal to a Saint Immortal? All sorts of doubts appeared in everyone's mind. Regardless, everyone had the same thought at the moment. We're doomed. If the martial artist in embroidered clothes was only a half-step Saint Immortal, then with the strength that Ningyu displayed earlier, Ningyu might be able to fight him. However, the martial artist in embroidered clothes was a Saint Immortal. How could they fight him? Ningyu, I'll ask you one last time. Submit or die. The martial artist in embroidered clothes leaped onto the pavilion and said fiercely, "Villains always die because they talk too much." Ningyu shrugged and said, "You utilized medicinal pills and overdrafted your lifespan to improve your cultivation to the Saint Immortal realm. If I was you, I would have definitely attacked as soon as my cultivation advanced into the Saint Immortal realm, and I wouldn't stand here and speak like an idiot. You're courting death." The martial artist in embroidered clothes' face turned cold. His figure flashed and he immediately charged at Ningyu. Bang! At the critical moment, Ningyu mobilized all the immortal chi in his body and suddenly punched out. Although Ningyu looked calm on the surface, he was actually very worried in his heart. No matter what. The cultivation of the embroidered clothed cultivators had risen to the Saint Immortal realm. He was no match for even the weakest Saint Immortal. Of course. Although he was worried, Ningyu did not lose his composure. Because he still had Di Ling Tian and Di Mo Tian. As a last resort, he could detonate the Empyrean demon sky and deal a heavy blow to the warrior in embroidered robe. How powerful was the self-destruction of Di Mo Tian, who was a half-step Saint Immortal? Even if the cultivator in embroidered robes used medicinal pills to raise his cultivation to the Saint Immortal stage, it would still be difficult for him to withstand it. Because the cultivator in embroidered clothes had only raised his energy to the Saint Immortal realm, but the strength of his body was still at the half-step Saint Immortal realm. Bang! The two fists collided. Ningyu was sent flying backward. On the other hand, the embroidered clothed cultivator floated in midair, not moving at all. The scene was the exact opposite. Ha ha ha. After gaining the upper hand in one move, the warrior in embroidered robes threw his head back and laughed maniacally. Looking around, the warrior in embroidered robes said coldly, "I will kill all of you, refine all of you into puppets, and bring you back to the tyrant extermination dominion as cannon fodder. It's over, it's over. I already said that Ningyu is no match for the warrior in embroidered robes. Ningyu is too domineering. If not for him, how could we have ended up like this? That's right, it's all over now." Seeing that Ningyu was at a disadvantage, those who were afraid of death began to clamor. This time, the clamor was even louder than before, because they realized that the Red Fiend had already turned into a shadow and entered the Red Fiend sword. Without the deterrence of the Red Fiend, they could clamor as much as they wanted. "Ningyu, are you going to detonate the Empyrean demon sky?" After fusing with the Red Fiend sword, the Red Fiend hurriedly sent a voice transmission to Ningyu. "Throw me out later. I'll detonate it. There's no need to detonate the Empyrean demon sky." Ningyu shook his head and said calmly, "The warrior in embroidered robes did not completely refine the pill he swallowed. Every time he attacks, his strength will decrease." Through the exchange just now, Ningyu could roughly determine the true combat strength of the warrior in embroidered robes. On the surface, the warrior in embroidered robes exuded the aura of a Saint Immortal, but in reality, he was still a distance away from that level. After all, it was not that easy to refine a pill that could raise one's cultivation level, especially one that could raise one's cultivation level from half-step Saint Immortal to Saint Immortal. According to Ningyu's speculation, in less than 10 minutes, the warrior in embroidered robes had at most refined half of the pill. "Ningyu, I'll ask you one last time. Submit or die." As expected. As if to verify Ningyu's words, the warrior in embroidered robes did not choose to attack immediately after succeeding in his attack. Instead, he spoke to Ningyu in a sinister tone. "Sigh, you've probably lost your mind." Ningyu sighed softly and said, "You've already asked me one last time. Now, you're asking me again. When will it be the last time? You." The warrior in embroidered robes pointed at Ningyu and said coldly, "Swoosh." Before the warrior in embroidered robes could finish his sentence, Ningyu immediately dashed out. Against the warrior in embroidered robes, he could not give him time to refine the pill in his body. The warrior in embroidered robes' strength had increased by so much just by refining half of the pill. Once he fully refined it, the consequences would be unimaginable. Therefore, Ningyu's idea was to keep fighting him so that he would not have time to refine the pill. Damn it! The warrior in embroidered robes could not help but curse as he looked at Ningyu, who was constantly charging at him. He did not expect his plan to be seen through by Ningyu. Go. With his plan seen through, the warrior in embroidered robes did not want to fight to the death. Instead, he wanted to escape. As the saying went, where there is life, there is hope. He came from the tyrant destruction dominion. As long as he could escape this time, he would have time to deal with Ningyu in the future. Buzz. He waved his hands repeatedly. In an instant, the warrior in embroidered robes tore through the void and entered. Bang. However, The warrior in embroidered robes had just entered the void when he shot out like a kite with a broken string and landed heavily on the ground. Phut! He spat out a mouthful of blood. The warrior in embroidered robes widened his eyes, his face filled with disbelief. He stared at the void and said sternly, "Who is it?" Buzz. The void trembled. A young warrior in blue robes slowly walked out from the void. Heavenly demon? The moment the blue-clothed martial artist came out, Ningyu's expression changed slightly. Because from the blue-clothed martial artist's body, he felt a familiar aura. If he was not mistaken, the blue-clothed martial artist's true identity was definitely a sky demon. Moreover, the blue-clothed martial artist's position among the sky demons should be comparable to Di Mo Tian, or even Di Ling Tian. Crack! The blue-clothed martial artist stepped on the warrior's chest, breaking several of his ribs. Chapter 2230. Since you already know, why bother asking? Ningyu looked at the martial artist in blue with a solemn expression. Although the blue-clothed martial artist did not make any moves, Ningyu knew that his strength was definitely not weak from the aura emitted by the blue-clothed martial artist. A peak half-step Saint Immortal. To be precise. The martial artist in blue was at least a peak half-step Saint Immortal and was only half a step away from the Saint Immortal realm. If the martial artist in blue was only a peak half-step Saint Immortal, Ningyu would not have such a solemn expression. That was because his combat strength was also a peak half-step Saint Immortal. However, the martial artist in blue was the Emperor of the Heavenly Fiends, so he must have many trump cards. If the martial artist in blue used all his trump cards, it was hard to tell who would win. Very well. The martial artist in blue nodded when he heard Ningyu's reply and said indifferently, "I'll give you a chance to live. Submit to me, be my slave, and help me get rid of the alliance of the high-class dominions within a radius of tens of thousands of miles. Someone once said the same thing to me." Ningyu gradually regained his composure. In a fight between powerhouses, the slightest carelessness would put one at a disadvantage. Ningyu did not want the martial artist in blue to find an opening. He shrugged and said calmly, "You've been to that battlefield, so you should know what happened to that person." "Hee, you have character. I like it." The martial artist in blue did not get angry. Instead, his lips curled up into a faint smile. Crack. Subsequently, the martial artist in blue exerted some force with his right leg and broke the martial artist's ribs. Ah! His ribs broke, and the cultivator in embroidered clothes let out a hysterical roar. "I'm from the Destruction Dominion. If you dare to treat me like this, the Destruction Dominion will never let you off," the martial artist in blue said fiercely. Noisy. The martial artist in blue raised his right leg again and stomped on the martial artist's head. Crack. In an instant. The martial artist's head was crushed and blood and flesh splattered everywhere. Gasp. The changes in the pavilion caused all the martial artists in the Heavenly Star Plaza to gasp. They were completely silent. In fact, everyone's faces were filled with despair. When Ningyu fought with the embroidered clothed martial artist just now, he did not gain an absolute advantage. On the other hand, blue-clothed martial artists could easily kill embroidered clothed martial artists. Comparing the two, even a pig would know that a blue-clothed martial artist was stronger. Would Ningyu be a match for the stronger blue-clothed cultivator? How about it? Do you want to reconsider? The blue-clad martial artist looked at Ningyu again and said, "I, Di Hutian, am a man of my words. As long as you submit to me, I'll definitely help you advance to the Saint Immortal realm. Why don't you consider submitting to me?" Ningyu gripped the red demon sword and took a step forward. He said coldly, "I've always treated my servants well. Courting death." Finally, Di Hutian lost his patience. He stepped on the embroidered clothed martial artist and dashed out quickly. Kill. Ningyu channeled the immortal chi in his body into the red demon sword and slashed out. Whoosh. A terrifying sword ray shot out and blocked Di Hutian in the blink of an eye. Shatter. Di Hutian clenched his right fist and punched the sword ray. Crack. A crisp sound was heard. The sword ray was instantly split into two. Child's play. Di Hutian smashed the sword ray with one move and said disdainfully, I wanted to make you my servant, but since you're so eager to die, I'll fulfill your wish. As soon as the word you was said, Di Hutian stomped on the ground and dashed out again. This time, Di Hutian's speed was extremely fast, so fast that it reached an extreme level. In the blink of an eye, he was next to Ning Yu. Di Hutian's fist contained terrifying waves of immortal qi. Di Hutian's punch landed squarely on Ning Yu's heart. This time, you're not good. Di Hutian said fiercely. However, before Di Hutian could finish his sentence, he stopped abruptly. He realized that his fist did not feel like it had landed on Ning Yu's heart. Instead, it felt like it had landed on a hard piece of metal. It's not good to be distracted while fighting me. Ning Yu stabbed out with the red demon sword. Poof! It was obvious that Di Hutian, who was slightly distracted, did not manage to block Ning Yu's sword. However, at the critical moment, Di Hutian used all his strength to tilt his body, causing the red demon sword to pass under his ribs and not pierce his heart. Otherwise, Ning Yu's attack alone would have been enough to send him to the afterlife. What the hell is that on you? Di Hutian retreated hastily as he looked at Ning Yu coldly. Are you talking about this? Ning Yu took out the leftover material from the lightning pool and shook it. This is just an ordinary piece of metal. An ordinary piece of metal? Di Hutian almost cursed out loud. How could an ordinary piece of metal block his attack? After all, even a half-step Saint Immortal Realm expert would find it difficult to resist his full-force attack, let alone Ning Yu. Of course. Ning Yu was not unscathed either. There were traces of blood near his heart, indicating that he had suffered serious injuries. However, compared to Di Hutian's injuries, his injuries were much lighter. You've completely infuriated me. Di Hutian snorted coldly and took out two fist-sized black objects. Have a taste of the Sky Demonic Explosive Bomb. Di Hutian flicked his wrist and threw out the two Sky Demonic Explosive Bombs. TSK. The Sky Demonic Explosive Bombs were extremely fast. Before Ning Yu could react, they were already in front of him. Damn it! Ning Yu couldn't help cursing inwardly when he saw the Sky Demon exploding flame bomb. Ning Yu sensed an extremely terrifying aura from the Sky Demonic Explosive Bombs. Ning Yu was no fool. He knew very well that with his current strength, he would not be able to withstand the impact of the Sky Demonic Explosive Bombs. What should I do? Ning Yu's face darkened as he tried to think of a countermeasure. Screw it. Soon, Ning Yu gritted his teeth and opened the Times Square Pagoda. He decided to put the two Sky Demonic Explosive Bombs into the Times Square Pagoda. Even now, Ning Yu had not completely figured out the level of the Times Square Pagoda. He only knew that the Times Square Pagoda could slow down the flow of time and was extremely hard. As for its other functions, Ning Yu was not sure at the moment. It did not matter as long as he could withstand the explosion of the Sky Demonic Explosive Bombs. Explode. Di Hutian naturally did not know that Ning Yu would use the Times Square Pagoda against him. With a thought, when the Sky Demon exploding Inferno Bomb approached Ning Yu, he wanted to control it to self-destruct. However, dreams were plentiful, but reality was harsh. No matter how hard Di Hutian tried, he could not detonate the Sky Demonic Explosive Bombs. In fact, Di Hutian even realized that he had lost contact with the Sky Demonic Explosive Bombs. What's going on? Di Hutian was dumbfounded. His eyes stared fixedly at the Times Square Pagoda in Ning Yu's hand. His heart suddenly skipped a beat. The Sky Demonic Explosive Bombs could easily blast a peerless immortal-grade Dharma treasure apart. There was only one possibility that the Sky Demonic Explosive Bombs had lost contact with the Times Square Pagoda. Chapter 2231. Above supreme treasures were saint treasures. Di Hutian knew better than anyone that only saint treasures could suppress the demonic exploding flame bomb. Other than that, supreme treasures, ingots, and the like were all useless. Ka. Just as Di Hutian was feeling puzzled, the Times Square Tower in Ning Yu's hand suddenly left his palm and flew into the air. Moreover, There was a cracking sound coming from within the Times Square tower. What's going on? This time, the one who was confused was Ningyu instead of Di Hutian. Stab. 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 The next moment, the surface layer of the Times Square tower kept falling off, revealing the golden body of the tower inside. The original color of the Times Square tower was not golden. Now that the outer layer had fallen off, the color had directly turned golden. Gulp. Looking at the Times Square tower that was constantly falling off, Ningyu could not help but swallow a mouthful of saliva. Because Ningyu discovered that his feeling with the Times Square tower was getting deeper and deeper. Previously, although he had taken control of the Times Square tower, he was not very familiar with its specific functions. But now, he had a whole new understanding of the Times Square tower. Delaying the passage of time was only one of the effects of the Times Square tower. The Times Square tower had another function, and that was to devour the heavenly demons. As long as the heavenly demons were thrown into the Times Square tower, the Times Square tower could easily devour them and turn them into pure energy. Using the Times Square tower to devour the heavenly demons was much faster than Ningyu's simple devouring. Moreover, the Times Square tower had a fatal restraining power against the heavenly demons. If a Saint Immortal level heavenly demon entered the Times Square tower, his cultivation would be suppressed to the half-step Saint Immortal realm. This effect was very, very exaggerated. In other words, as long as Ningyu could lure a Saint Immortal level heavenly demon into the Times Square tower, he could even kill it inside. However, these were not the focus of Ningyu's attention. The focus of Ningyu's attention was in the depths of the Times Square tower. There, Ningyu seemed to have discovered a huge tree branch of the world. The tree branch of this world was very big, to the point of exaggeration. According to Ningyu's estimations, if Ninglu could devour it, his cultivation could even soar to the Saint Immortal realm. Damn it! Di Hutian cursed under his breath. He then rose from the ground and rushed toward the Times Square pagoda. Your opponent is me. Seeing Di Hutian rush out, Ningyu leaped into the air and slashed out with the Red Devil sword. The Times Square pagoda had reached a crucial moment of transformation. How could Ningyu allow Di Hutian to wreak havoc? In order to stop Di Hutian, Ningyu channeled the immortal chi in his body into the Red Demon Sword. If you go in now, you will inevitably encounter danger. What do you mean? Ninglu asked. Give the Times Square pagoda some time. It won't be too late for you to go in after it completely refines Di Hutian. Ningyu rolled his eyes and said, can the Times Square pagoda really refine Di Hutian? The Dark Emperor hesitated. The Dark Emperor knew very well that Di Hutian's strength was comparable to Ningyu's. Ningyu's battle prowess was comparable to a half-step Saint Immortal expert. From this, it could be seen that Di Hutian was definitely not weak. The Dark Emperor had seen the Times Square pagoda before. Could the Times Square pagoda refine a half-step Saint Immortal martial artist? The Dark Emperor was skeptical. It's true. Ningyu nodded and replied. In the beginning, Ningyu didn't believe it either. But as the Times Square pagoda transformed, his connection with the Times Square pagoda became deeper and deeper. The real name of the Times Square pagoda was not the Times Square pagoda, but the Heavenly Demon Pagoda. The so-called Heavenly Demon Pagoda, as the name suggested, had a fatal restraining effect on heavenly demons. Ningyu also found out that the original owner of the Heavenly Demon Pagoda was an immortal king expert. Above the Saint Immortal was the Heavenly Monarch, and above the Heavenly Monarch was the Immortal King. The might of an Immortal King-level magic treasure could be imagined. Don't worry, when Di Hutian is refined, I will let you devour all the energy. How could Ningyu not know what the Dark Emperor was thinking? He, the Red Devil, the Dark Emperor, and Ninglu, the four of them were originally equal in strength. Recently, the Red Devil's strength had soared, causing the Dark Emperor and Ninglu's strength to be unable to keep up. Ninglu didn't have to worry, he had the World Branch to devour. But the Dark Emperor could only devour the energy of others to increase his cultivation. Swoosh! At this moment, a skeleton shot out from the Heavenly Demon Pagoda and landed heavily on the ground. As for the Heavenly Demon Pagoda, It turned into an afterimage and charged into the distant void. What's going on? Chapter 2232. Crack. While Ningyu was still in shock, the void in the distance suddenly cracked open. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. 3 figures dashed out from the void. Swoosh. However, the heavenly demon tower appeared next to the 3 figures as soon as they emerged from the void. An extremely terrifying suction force erupted from the heavenly demon tower, trying to suck the 3 figures in. Damn it, what the hell is this? A middle-aged man in his 30s or 40s could not help but curse when he sensed the powerful suction force rushing toward him. Let's go. The other old man said hurriedly. We can't leave. The 2 of you block this strange tower for me. The last young man shouted, I'm going to take Ningyu's head. Di Lingtian. Ningyu's expression changed slightly when he saw the young man's face. The young man looked so similar to Di Lingtian in the red demon sword. They were practically carved from the same mold. Swoosh. The young man was very fast. In the blink of an eye, he arrived in front of Ningyu. He clenched his right hand into a fist and punched toward Ningyu's head with a violent gust of wind. The young man's punch was extremely powerful. An ordinary half-step sacred celestial would be crippled even if he did not die if he was hit by it. However, who was Ningyu? Although his cultivation was only at the peak of virtual celestial, his combat power was no weaker than a half-step sacred celestial. Bang! The 2 fists collided. In an instant, the young man was sent flying. How is this possible? The young man was shocked when he was sent flying by Ningyu. How can you be so powerful? My brother told me that you're still a step away from becoming a sacred celestial. Why are you only a step away now? Your brother? Are you Di Lingtian's younger brother? Ningyu was slightly stunned and asked in confusion. That's right. I'm Di Lingtian's younger brother, Di Dantian. The young man said coldly, if you know what's good for you, surrender now. Otherwise, you'll be in deep trouble. Sorry, I'm already good-looking enough. I don't need your help for now. Ningyu calmed down and shrugged. The young man, who was Di Dantian, was much weaker than him in terms of strength. Even without the help of the heavenly demon tower, he could easily defeat Di Dantian. I admit that you are very strong, but I brought 2. What? Di Dantian admitted that he was weaker than Ningyu. However, he pointed at the 2 middle-aged men in the sky and said fiercely. However, halfway through his sentence, the young man's face was filled with shock. Bang! Bang! 2 crisp sounds rang out consecutively. The 2 middle-aged men were like kites with broken strings, falling straight to the ground. Poochie! Poochie! Blood spurted out and the 2 middle-aged men fell between Ningyu and Di Dantian. Whoosh! As for the heavenly demon tower, it flew back into Ningyu's hand. Before Di Lingtian sent you here, didn't he tell you that his clone is still in my hands? Ningyu played with the heavenly demon tower in his hand and said, Hong Mo, bring Di Lingtian out. Yes. Hong Mo understood and immediately took out Di Lingtian's clone from the red demon sword. Bang! Di Lingtian's clone, who was already weak, looked even paler than before. Brother! Seeing Di Lingtian's clone, Di Dantian shouted, I will definitely save you. You. Although Di Lingtian's clone's face was pale, he was shaking with anger when he saw Di Dantian not far away. Brother, don't worry. I've brought this. Seeing that Di Lingtian was furious, Di Dantian took out a palm-sized black object from his pocket. Heavenly Lord Bone. The black object in Di Dantian's hand was none other than the bone of a heavenly lord. Above the Saint Celestial was the heavenly lord. The power of a heavenly lord's bone was imaginable. Fuse. Di Dantian raised his right hand and threw the heavenly lord bone into his mouth. The next moment, the heavenly lord bone entered Di Dantian's stomach through his throat and instantly fused with his heart. Buzz. After fusing with the heavenly lord bone, Di Dantian's aura began to skyrocket. Bang! Accompanied by a muffled sound, Di Dantian's aura had already reached the Saint Celestial stage from the half-step Saint Celestial stage. Moreover, Di Dantian's aura continued to skyrocket. At this rate, Di Dantian would probably advance to the middle stage of the Saint Celestial stage soon. Damn it. Feeling the aura from Di Dantian, Ningyu cursed under his breath and hurriedly threw out the Heavenly Demon Tower. A terrifying suction force shot out from the Heavenly Demon Tower, trying to suck Di Dantian into it. The Heavenly Demon Tower had a fatal restraining effect on heavenly demons. Although Di Dantian had advanced to the early stage of the Saint Celestial stage, once he entered the Heavenly Demon Tower, his cultivation would drop to the half-step Saint Celestial stage. Trying to suck me into this strange tower? Di Dantian waved his hand and terrifying celestial chi surged out from his body. He then attacked Ningyu. Crack. In an instant, the void cracked. Swoosh. Di Dantian did not stay idle. He chased after Di Dantian and clenched his right fist and punched the Heavenly Demon Tower. Watch out! Di Lingtian's clone shouted when he saw Di Dantian overestimating himself and attacking the Heavenly Demon Tower. Swoosh. However, it was obvious that Di Lingtian's clone's shout was too late. As soon as Di Dantian's fist came into contact with the Heavenly Demon Tower, it was sucked into the tower by the terrifying suction force. Watch them. Ningyu ordered Hong Mo and leaped into the Heavenly Demon Tower as well. Ningyu's idea was simple. Before Di Dantian's cultivation reached the middle stage of the Saint Celestial stage, he would enter the Heavenly Demon Tower and kill him. Otherwise, when Di Dantian's cultivation reached the middle stage of the Saint Celestial stage, even if Di Dantian was trapped in the Heavenly Demon Tower, he would not be able to kill him. The reason was that, because the Heavenly Demon Tower could only suppress a sky demon's cultivation by a small stage. In other words, Di Dantian was at the early stage of the Saint Celestial stage and the Heavenly Demon Tower could suppress him to the half-step Saint Celestial stage. If Di Dantian advanced to the middle stage of the Saint Celestial stage, the Heavenly Demon Tower could only suppress him to the early stage of the Saint Celestial stage. With Ningyu's current strength, he could kill a half-step Saint Celestial sky demon. However, he would not be able to defeat a early stage Saint Celestial sky demon. Ningyu, what kind of pagoda is this? Why can it suppress my cultivation? Inside the Heavenly Demon Tower, Di Dantian looked at Ningyu coldly and said, "If you're smart, you'd better stop suppressing me. Otherwise, you know the consequences." "I don't know what the consequences are." Ningyu shrugged and said indifferently, "Your current cultivation is at the half-step Saint Immortal realm, and you're still a step away from the initial stage of the Saint Immortal realm. On the other hand, my strength is only half a step away from the initial stage of the Saint Immortal realm, so it wouldn't take too long for me to kill you." "Kill me?" Di Dantian said coldly, "That depends on whether you're capable of doing so." Bone of Heaven Lord. Chapter 2233. Buzz. No wonder a Lord of Heaven was more terrifying than a holy immortal. Even a piece of bone could release a shocking amount of energy. As he continued to refine the bone of heaven in his body, Di Dantian's suppressed aura began to grow stronger. At this rate, Di Dantian's aura would reach the early stage of the holy immortal in a few minutes. Kill. How could Ningyu allow Di Dantian to refine the bone of heaven? With a low roar, he clenched his right hand into a fist and punched out. Child's play. As Di Dantian refined the bone of the Heaven Monarch, he casually threw out a punch and clashed with Ningyu's fist. Swoosh. Swoosh. Ningyu and Di Dantian retreated at the same time. Judging from the distance they retreated, Ningyu still had the upper hand. "I admit that you're strong. But so what?" Di Dantian smirked and said, "Even with the help of this strange tower, you still can't defeat me. When the time is up, you'll die." Ningyu looked gloomy. Ningyu knew what Di Dantian meant when the time was up. To put it simply, Di Dantian had reached the early stage of the Holy Immortal again. "Let's go." Ningyu made up his mind and flew deep into the Heavenly Demon Tower. Originally, he could defeat Di Dantian easily. However, as Di Dantian refined the bone of heaven, the gap between him and Di Dantian was getting smaller and smaller. If he continued to fight normally, the chance of him winning was almost zero. Therefore, he had to find another way. At this time, The tree branch of the world in the heavenly demon tower became Ningyu's first choice. Ninglu could refine the tree branch of the world, and so could Ningyu. The only difference between Ningyu and Ninglu was their refining speed. Ninglu might only need half a day to refine the tree branch of the world, but Ningyu needed a day. Of course. Whether it was a day or half a day, Ningyu didn't care. There was only one thought in his mind. That was to increase his cultivation to the early stage of the Saint Celestial stage before Di Dantian reached the early stage of the Saint Celestial stage. Di Dantian humphed coldly. His body flashed and he followed Ningyu closely. Whoosh, whoosh. Within the heavenly demon tower, Ningyu and Di Dantian, one in front and one behind, dashed into the depths of the cave. I can't believe it. It did not take long. Ningyu and Di Dantian came to the depths of the heavenly demon tower. As soon as he stopped, Di Dantian couldn't help but curse. Looking at the gigantic tree branch in front of him, Di Dantian opened his mouth wide in disbelief. This is the ancient celestial tree? Not only was Di Dantian shocked, but his body was also shaking. What happened? Seeing Di Dantian's action, Ningyu frowned slightly. He was a little surprised. Why did Di Dantian act like that when he saw the world tree? Could it be, suddenly? Ningyu thought of a possibility. Di Dantian was a heavenly demon. Although the tree branch in front of him was just the world tree, it was still the world tree. Maybe the heavenly demon tower's ability to suppress the heavenly demon was because of the world tree. Thinking about this, Ningyu dashed out and used all his strength to carry the world tree branch. He then swung it at Di Dantian. Oh no! Seeing this, Di Dantian's expression changed and he quickly retreated. As expected, Di Dantian's action made Ningyu feel relieved. The world tree branch really had the ability to suppress the heavenly demon. Great! Ningyu was overjoyed when he realized this. Run! While Ningyu was excited, Di Dantian was doomed. Di Dantian immediately gave up on refining the Lord of Heaven's bone and rushed to the entrance of the heavenly demon tower. Di Dantian was not an idiot. Ningyu was carrying the world tree branch in his hand. Even though he had reached the early stage of the holy celestial stage, there was no way he could fight against Ningyu. Instead of staying here to die, he would rather leave this place as soon as possible. However, dreams were plentiful, but reality was harsh. How could Ningyu allow Di Dantian to escape? He tore off a small piece of the world tree branch and rushed to Di Dantian. In just 1 minute, Ningyu caught up with Di Dantian and punched him. Swoosh! Along with Ningyu's punch, there was a small piece of the world tree branch that was hidden in his sleeve. Stab! As a matter of fact, the power of the world tree branch was extremely powerful. In just one move, Di Dantian's chest was pierced through. Luckily, Di Dantian moved his body slightly during the critical moment. Otherwise, Ningyu's attack would have pierced through Di Dantian's heart. Ningyu, let's make a deal. Seeing that Ningyu was going to attack again, Di Dantian said, I will give you the bone of Heaven Lord and you let me go. Let you go? Ningyu raised his eyebrows and said, give me the bone of Heaven Lord first and I will think about it. No, you have to let me go first, then I will give you the bone of Heaven Lord. Di Dantian said coldly. Ningyu shrugged and said, if you don't want to, then forget it. I have nothing to do with you anyway. You. Don't push me too far. Di Dantian clenched his fists and said fiercely, if you piss me off, I will die with you. Die with me? Hihi, I am sorry. You don't even have the right to die with me. Ningyu smiled. Ningyu knew it very well. When Di Dantian was fighting against the world tree branch, he must have been affected. Otherwise, with Di Dantian's personality, he would never have asked for a compromise. All right, I will give you the bone of Heaven Lord first. Di Dantian's eyes shone and he seemed to have made a difficult decision. He gritted his teeth and said, but after I give you the bone of Heaven Lord, I hope you will keep your promise and let me go. As soon as he said that, Di Dantian forced the bone of Heaven Lord out of his body and threw it at Ningyu. Looking at the bone of Heaven Lord flying towards him, Ningyu frowned slightly. There must be something fishy about this. Di Dantian would not surrender for no reason, and he would not give up the bone of Heaven Lord for no reason. There was only one reason for this to happen. Di Dantian was playing a trick. Explode. As expected. When the bone of Heaven Lord was one finger away from Ningyu, Di Dantian shouted. Rumble. In an instant, the bone of the Heavenly Lord exploded, and countless broken bones attacked Ningyu from all directions. Ha ha ha, you are going to die this time. Seeing that Ningyu was surrounded by broken bones, Di Dantian raised his head and laughed. I have absorbed all the essence of the bone of Heaven Lord. All that is left is the wrath of the Heaven Lord. Is that so? At this moment, Ningyu moved and appeared behind Di Dantian. Di Dantian's pupils shrank when he heard those words. He quickly retreated. Bang! However, it was too late for Di Dantian to retreat at this moment. Ningyu held the world tree branch tightly and punched Di Dantian's head. In an instant. Chapter 2234. What wrath of the Heavenly Lord? It's just a trace of pressure left behind by the Heavenly Lord. Retracting his fist, Ningyu looked at the dead Di Dantian and said in disdain. The essence of the bone of the Heavenly Lord was indeed devoured by Di Dantian. However, what was left was not the wrath of the Heavenly Lord, but a trace of pressure left in the bone. As it had been a long time, the power of the pressure was very weak. It could not even defeat an ordinary virtual celestial, let alone kill Ningyu. Absorb it. After killing Di Dantian, Ningyu did not leave the Heavenly Demon Tower immediately. Instead, he sat down with his legs crossed and started devouring the energy left behind by Di Dantian. Di Dantian was only a half-step Saint Celestial, so his body had very little energy. Most importantly, he had devoured the bone of the Heavenly Lord, so his body had absorbed the energy from the bone of the Heavenly Lord. This energy was what Ningyu needed. Pest. As Ningyu continued to absorb, Di Dantian's body gradually shriveled up. Not long after, Di Dantian was devoured until only his skeleton was left. Phew. Ningyu let out a breath of turbid air and his eyes were filled with excitement. After devouring Di Dantian, Ningyu could clearly feel that his strength had increased by leaps and bounds. Although his cultivation was still at the peak virtual celestial, his overall combat power was comparable to an early-stage Saint Celestial. It's time to go out. With a flick of his finger, Ningyu burned Di Dantian's skeleton before flying out of the Heavenly Demon Tower. It's Ningyu. He's fine. That's great. That's great. Whoosh. Seeing Ningyu coming out of the Heavenly Demon Tower, the entire Heavenly Star Square burst into cheers. Ka. Of course, not everyone was cheering. Those who were afraid of death and mocked Ningyu were trembling in fear. Their true thoughts were that they wanted Ningyu to die in the Heavenly Demon Tower, because they were afraid of Ningyu's revenge, afraid that Ningyu would settle scores with them later. You killed my brother? In the pavilion, Di Lingtian's clone's face was filled with rage as he said furiously, "You're finished. No one in this world can save you. Dark Emperor, Red Devil, Ning Lu." Ningyu could not be bothered with Di Lingtian's clone. He waved his hand, signaling the Dark Emperor and the others to come over. Swish swish swish. The Dark Emperor, Ning Lu, and the others understood and immediately flew up to the pavilion. Di Lingtian's clone will be devoured by the Dark Emperor, and Di Mo's clone will be devoured by the Red Devil. Ning Lu, follow me into the Heavenly Devil Tower, Ningyu ordered. All right. Hearing Ningyu's words, the Dark Emperor and Ning Lu could not help but applaud. Di Lingtian's clone was a half-step Saint Celestial. The Dark Emperor was confident that he could advance to the peerless celestial stage after devouring him. Ning Lu was even more excited than the Dark Emperor. He could sense the aura of the World Tree in the Heavenly Devil Tower. As long as he devoured the World Tree, his cultivation could even reach the Saint Celestial stage. The Red Devil was fine. He was currently a half-step peerless celestial. If he devoured Di Mo, he should be able to advance to the mid-stage peerless immortal stage. At that moment, a scream suddenly traveled into Ningyu's ears. Ning Yu was slightly taken aback when he heard that. He had forgotten about this matter. Shueyu Fairy was still in the Red Devil Sword. Moreover, she had been poisoned by the joyful reunion powder of that cultivator in Tyrant Destruction Dominion. There were only two ways to get rid of the joyful reunion powder. Find the antidote, or have intercourse. Ning Lu, enter the Heavenly Devil Tower yourself. I'll be right behind you. Ning Yu tossed the Heavenly Devil Tower to Ning Lu, then leaped into the Red Devil Sword. As soon as he entered the Red Devil Sword, Ning Yu saw Shueyu Fairy taking off her clothes. Her long hair fluttered in the wind. Her eyebrows were a perfect shade, and her eyes were as bright as the moon and the stars. Her nose was straight, and her cheeks were pink. Her cherry lips were crimson, and her fair, oval-shaped face was flushed. Her figure was lithe, and she had a mature charm. Hot, I'm hot. Shueyu Fairy's eyes were misty, and her lips parted. See no evil, hear no evil. Ning Yu hurriedly flew to Shueyu Fairy's side and covered her with her clothes. Wake up. In order to wake Shueyu Fairy up, Ning Yu raised his right hand and slapped Shueyu Fairy's shoulder. Hiss. A soft hiss sounded. What's wrong with me? Shueyu Fairy exclaimed. When she saw Ning Yu hugging her, Shueyu Fairy quickly struggled free and said coldly, "What are you doing? Pervert." She could tell. Shueyu Fairy was furious. I'm a pervert. Ning Yu rolled his eyes and touched his nose. If I was a pervert, you would have lost your virginity long ago. You've been poisoned by the joyous union powder of the Tyrant Destruction Weave. If you don't have intercourse within half an hour or take the antidote, your body will explode and you will die. What? Shueyu Fairy was shocked and hurriedly checked the condition of her body. Shueyu Fairy was dumbfounded by what she saw. In an instant, Shueyu Fairy remembered everything. She had indeed been poisoned by the joyous union powder of the Tyrant Warrior. If not for Ning Yu's help, she would have become a cauldron of the Tyrant Warrior. You killed the Tyrant Warrior? Shueyu Fairy asked. Yes, I killed the Tyrant Warrior. Ning Yu shrugged. Give me the antidote. Shueyu Fairy stretched out her hand. Ning Yu spread his hands and said, I'm sorry, the joyous union powder's antidote has been swallowed by the Tyrant Warrior, and his body has turned into powder. Whoosh. Hearing Ning Yu's words, Shueyu Fairy's face instantly turned cold. Without the antidote, what could she do? Gritting her teeth, Shueyu Fairy's gaze fell on Ning Yu. What do you want? Seeing Shueyu Fairy look at him, Ning Yu hurriedly jumped back a few steps and said, I already said that the antidote is not with me. Why don't you believe me? Me. Shueyu Fairy snorted coldly and then said softly, I can't die yet. You have to help me. I know you can't die, but where can I find the antidote for you? Ning Yu said helplessly, I have a blood feud, I can't die yet. Shueyu Fairy said, I am an ice crystal. You won't lose out if you help me. Ice crystal? Ning Yu was slightly startled, then he suddenly understood, no wonder the Tyrant Warrior wanted to use you as a cauldron. So you are an ice crystal that is 1 in 10,000. Ning Yu knew about the ice crystal. Using an ice crystal as a cauldron could increase one's talent by 1-fold. To increase one's talent by 1-fold, how exaggerated was that? After swallowing Di Wentian's talent, Ning Yu's talent had already reached a terrifying level. If his talent could be increased by another fold, then in the future, when he cultivated, it would be as easy as eating and drinking. What are you waiting for? You won't lose out. Shueyu Fairy said impatiently, after today, you and I don't owe each other anything. You walk your single log bridge, I walk my open road. Whoosh. As they spoke. Chapter 2235. Outside the Red Demon Sword. The Dark Emperor did not hesitate and immediately activated his spell to devour Di Lingtian's clone. Di Lingtian's clone had long been controlled by Ning Yu. Therefore, when the Dark Emperor devoured it, he would not be affected at all. Kai Kai. Even though his cultivation state was only at the ancestor immortal state, the speed at which he devoured energy was still extremely fast. In just 10 minutes, the energy within the Dark Emperor's body had reached its limit. Bang! A muffled sound rang out. The Dark Emperor's cultivation realm surged all the way to ancestral immortal late stage. Devour more. The Dark Emperor naturally wouldn't waste even a little bit of time. After advancing to the ancestral immortal late stage, the speed at which he devoured energy rose once again. This time, in just 8 minutes, he advanced from ancestral immortal late stage to ancestral immortal peak stage. On the other side, the Red Devil placed both hands on the head of the Sky Emperor Demon. A steady stream of devouring power entered the Sky Emperor Demon and began to devour him. The Red Demon was a half-step peerless immortal, so he could devour energy much faster than the Dark Emperor. The Dark Emperor ascended from early ancestral immortal to peak ancestral immortal in 18 minutes, while the Red Devil soared all the way to early peerless immortal. F***CK. With this time, within the heavenly demon tower, Ninglu couldn't help but swear. The reason why Ninglu cursed was not because he was angry, but because he was shocked. The World Tree branch in the heavenly demon tower had completely exceeded his imagination. After devouring these World Tree branches, Ninglu was very confident that he would be able to advance to the Saint Immortal realm. Ton. Ninglu immediately went all out, crazily devouring the World Tree trunk. As the devouring continued, Ninglu's cultivation soared like a rocket. However, even though Ninglu's cultivation base had increased, his body was still that of a child's. This was a little awkward. Drip, drip. Time was ticking away. In the blink of an eye, 3 hours passed. After 3 hours of frenzied devouring, the Dark Emperor's cultivation rose from early ancestral immortal to early peerless immortal. His cultivation had risen from half-step peerless immortal to mid-stage peerless immortal. Of course, the one whose cultivation increased the most was Ninglu, who was in the heavenly demon tower. His cultivation rose from the ancestral immortal early stage to the saint immortal early stage. Even so, Ninglu was unable to completely devour the world tree trunk. We can only let Ningyu devour the rest. Patting his round belly, Ninglu leaped up and flew out of the heavenly demon tower. Your cultivation. Seeing Ninglu come out, the Dark Emperor and Red Devil's faces were filled with surprise. They had originally thought that the increase in their cultivation was already terrifying enough. Who would have thought that Ninglu was even more terrifying than them? SOSO. Ninglu said proudly, now, with the two of you joining hands, I only need one move to defeat you. Alright. You're amazing, alright? The Dark Emperor and Ninglu rolled their eyes. They knew that Ningrode was the world tree. When they were at the same cultivation level as Ninglu, they were still no match for him, let alone now that Ninglu's cultivation level was several streets ahead of theirs. At this time, even if the two of them joined forces, they would definitely not be a match for Ninglu. By the way, where is Ningyu? Ninglu waved his hand and asked. Whoosh, whoosh. Just as Ninglu finished speaking, 2 figures darted out from the Red Devil sword. Seeing the 2 figures that darted out from the Red Devil sword, Ninglu and Red Devil looked at each other, and both saw something strange in each other's eyes. Ningyu, from now on, we don't owe each other anything. Shueyu Fairy wore a bamboo hat and said to Ningyu, don't think about looking for me in the future. Swoosh. Then, Shueyu Fairy's figure flashed and she flew into the distance. Wait, how could Ningyu allow Shueyu Fairy to leave just like that? Leaping up, Ningyu blocked in front of Shueyu Fairy and said, your body is very weak now. In my opinion, you should recuperate from your injuries first. I'm not injured. Poochie. Shueyu Fairy said coldly. However, just as she finished speaking, Shueyu Fairy spat out a mouthful of dark red blood. You're still saying that you're not injured. Ningyu rolled his eyes, grabbed Shueyu Fairy's hand and flew towards the heavenly demon tower. Although the ice crystal could double the talent of others, it was very damaging to the user. At this time, Shueyu Fairy was seriously injured. If she did not receive treatment in time, it would be very difficult for her to recover to her peak state in the future. Let me go. Shueyu Fairy struggled with all her might, wanting to break free from Ningyu's hands. However, Ningyu, whose talent had doubled, had more than doubled his strength. Not to mention that Shueyu Fairy was injured. Even if she was not injured, she would definitely not be able to break free from Ningyu's restraints. Not long after, Ningyu brought Shueyu Fairy into the Heavenly Demon Tower. As expected, there is still the World Tree. Looking at the small branch left in front of him, Ningyu let out a long breath. The World Tree was an ancient divine tree and had a miraculous effect on healing. Although Shueyu Fairy's internal injuries were serious, with the World Tree's treatment, it would not take long for her to completely recover. What is this? Why do I feel a strong energy fluctuation in its body? Since she was unable to break free, Shueyu Fairy calmed down and asked curiously. Shueyu Fairy bore a blood feud. With her current cultivation, it was completely a pipe dream for her to take revenge. Unless her cultivation increased again, to the peak of the Saint Immortal Realm, or the Heavenly Monarch Realm, then there would be a chance of taking revenge. Don't worry about it for now. Ningyu took the World Tree branch and threw it to Shueyu Fairy. I'll protect you, you devour it. If you don't say, I won't devour it, Shueyu Fairy said in a deep voice. Then forget it, if you don't want to devour it, then don't devour it. Anyway, whether you can take revenge or not has nothing to do with me. Ningyu shrugged and said indifferently. You. Hearing Ningyu's words, Shueyu Fairy was so angry that her nose became crooked. How could he speak like that? Don't waste time. When you recover to your peak state, we still have to go to the Spirit Tao Alliance and the Heavenly Palace Alliance. Ningyu continued. The Spirit Tao Alliance and the Heavenly Palace Alliance have already been taken down by the imperial descendants of the Scythians. The earlier we go, the earlier we can save them. Taking a deep breath, Shueyu Fairy sat down cross-legged and began to refine the World Tree branch. Zap zap. Shueyu Fairy was an ice crystal, so the speed at which she refined the World Tree branch was not too slow. At this speed, Shueyu Fairy would be able to recover to her peak state in 3 hours at most. In fact, her cultivation might even advance from late-stage Peerless Immortal to peak Peerless Immortal. While Shueyu Fairy was refining the World Tree branch, the void above the Spirit Tao City suddenly split open and several figures appeared. If Ningyu was here, he would definitely notice that one of the figures was very familiar to him. Di Lingtian. That's right. The skinny figure at the front was none other than Di Lingtian. I'll give you half an hour to take over the Spirit Tao Alliance. Take all the Dharma treasures and resources, then head to the Kungsu Alliance. Chapter 2236. Ningyu, you killed my brother. No one in this world can save you. Di Lingtian's face was extremely cold. He had already received news that his clone had already been refined in the Kuanshu Alliance. Di Dantian, who went to avenge him, also died in the Kuanshu Alliance. His original plan was to wait until his cultivation level reached the middle stage Saint Immortal Realm before going to the Kuanshu Alliance to look for trouble with Ningyu. However, the death of his clone and Di Dantian made him change his strategy and go to the Kuanshu Alliance first. After all, as far as he was concerned, even if his cultivation was only at the initial stage of the Saint Immortal Realm, he would still be able to kill Ningyu with ease. Drip. Drip. Time was ticking away. In the blink of an eye, half an hour had passed. Voila. Di Lingtian's underlings did not waste a single second. Half an hour later, they left Spirit Tao City and arrived in front of Di Lingtian. Whoosh. A middle-aged man flicked his wrist and threw an interspatial ring to Di Lingtian. Obviously, inside the ring were all the magic treasures and elixirs that they had plundered. Very good. Taking the storage ring and taking a look, Di Lingtian nodded his head. Waving both hands, he tore through the void and dived in. Catcher. Behind Di Lingtian, many martial artists moved and followed closely. The distance between the Spiritual Tao Alliance and the Brilliant Void Alliance was extremely far for warriors at the Ancestral Immortal or Essence Immortal level. However, for Peerless Immortals and even Saint Immortals, it was very close. It only took a few hours. Di Lingtian and his group arrived in front of Stellar Sky City. As soon as he arrived at Heavenly Star City, Di Lingtian raised his brows and felt slightly surprised. Because he discovered that the entire Tianxing city seemed to be protected by a huge barrier of immortal energy. Go. With a thought, Di Lingtian flicked out a cold ray of light. Kai Kai. The moment the cold light touched the immortal Qi barrier, it turned into nothingness and disappeared. It is indeed extraordinary. Di Lingtian frowned slightly. If he used his full strength, he would naturally be able to break through the immortal energy barrier. The crux of the matter was that his perception couldn't penetrate the barrier. He didn't know who was waiting for him in the Stellar Sky City. Trying to break the barrier rashly might produce the opposite of the desired result. Think of a way to enter Stellar Sky City. After thinking for a moment, Di Lingtian pointed at a martial artist with a crew cut and said, "Your mission is to find out the situation in Stellar Sky City and report back as soon as possible." Yes. The crew cut martial artist understood and immediately rushed towards Stellar Sky City. Although the crew cut martial artist was rushing towards the Stellar Sky City, when he arrived at the city walls, he suddenly dropped down and burrowed deep into the ground. Dig into the ground. The crew cut martial artist's unique skill was the earth drilling technique. Relatively speaking, ordinary martial artists might only be able to drill 100,000 meters underground, but martial artists with flat-top haircuts could drill 150,000 meters, or even 200,000 meter. To a martial artist with a crew cut, drilling into the ground was as easy as eating and drinking. Ka. After burrowing into the ground, the crew cut martial artist quietly rushed towards the center of the Stellar Sky City. At the same time, he released his perception and searched for the weakest point of the array. Above Tianxing City, there was a protective barrier of immortal qi. Underground, however, was a formation. After all, Tianxing City was where the headquarters of the Kuanshu Alliance was located, so it was only natural that they would be protected. Found it. It did not take long. The crew-cut martial artist was overjoyed. In an area far away, he found a weak point in the formation. He was absolutely confident that he could enter Stellar Sky City from there. Swoosh. With a flash, the crew-cut martial artist pushed his speed to the limit and arrived near the weak point in the blink of an eye. He wasn't a hothead. Instead of attacking the weak point immediately, he paused to observe first. After confirming that there was no one within several kilometers, he turned into a blur and burrowed into the weak point. A room. Entering the weak point, the crew-cut martial artist instantly broke through the formation's defenses. However, when he reappeared, he found himself in a room. Oh no! The crew-cut martial artist's expression changed drastically. This was because he discovered that the tightly shut door had suddenly opened, and a thin figure slowly appeared in his line of sight. Hiss. Despite being a peak peerless immortal, the crew-cut martial artist couldn't help but gasp when he sensed the aura emanating from the figure. Who are you? The crew-cut martial artist berated. Ningyu's guess was right. If I left a weak point here, someone would definitely come in. Ninglu shrugged and looked at the crew-cut martial artist with slight disappointment. What a pity that I only attracted a peak peerless immortal. He's not even a half-step saint immortal. Don't you dare get cocky. The crew-cut martial artist harumphed and charged at Ninglu with both feet on the ground. The crew-cut martial artist was extremely fast, almost to the limit of his speed. However, Ninglu made no attempt to block the crew-cut martial artist's charge. Instead, he turned into a blur and burrowed into the ground. Damn it! The crew-cut martial artist cursed inwardly when he saw Ninglu's actions. He had intended to attract Ninglu's attention and find a way to burrow into the ground to escape. Who would have thought that Ningluxian would see through his actions first, making him unable to leave? Screw it. Since he couldn't leave, the crew-cut martial artist decided to fight Ninglu to the death. Bam! However, the crew-cut martial artist was a peak peerless immortal. Even if he fought Ninglu to the death, he would still lose. Ninglu defeated the crew-cut martial artist with a single move and he fell heavily to the ground. Fart. He spat out a mouthful of crimson blood and his peak peerless immortal aura instantly dropped to freezing point. Swoosh swoosh swoosh. At that moment, 3 figures suddenly appeared out of thin air and landed in the room. Without a doubt. Ningyu, the Dark Emperor, and the Red Demon. The mastermind behind all of this was none other than Ningyu. Several hours ago, after Fairy Watermoon had recovered to her peak state and ascended to peak Peerless Immortal, Ningyu had begun preparing for the defense of Skystar City. Ningyu had done so because a Peerless Immortal from the Spirit Tao Alliance had sacrificed his life to send a message. After receiving the message, Ningyu had gathered everyone's strength to set up a protective barrier of immortal chi above Skystar City and a formation underground. As expected, the formation underground had played a huge role in capturing a peak Peerless Immortal celestial demon. "Are you afraid?" Ningyu moved his feet and arrived in front of the cultivator with the crew cut. He squatted down and patted him on the shoulder. He asked, "I will give you a chance to live. As long as you tell me how many people there are and what their cultivations are, I can let you go." "Are you serious?" the crew cut martial artist exclaimed. "Of course." Ningyu nodded. "I always mean what I say. If I say I'll let you go, I'll definitely let you go." "All right, I'll tell you." Chapter 2237. Hiss. The Dark Emperor and the Red Fiend gasped when they heard what the crew-cut martial artist said. They knew that Di Lingtian would definitely bring a large number of experts, but they didn't expect there to be 20 peak Peerless Immortals and 10 late-stage Peerless Immortals. Even if they were prepared, it would be difficult for them to defend against so many experts. "What's Di Lingtian's cultivation?" Ningyu's expression didn't change much. Given his and Ninglu's strength, they could kill peak Peerless Immortals almost instantly. What he was most concerned about was Di Lingtian's cultivation. Di Lingtian was his main target. As long as he could kill Di Lingtian, the rest of the Skyfians would be useless. "Early stage Saint Immortal." The crew-cut martial artist answered honestly. "Very well, you can leave now." Ningyu patted the shoulder of the martial artist with the crew cut again, then got up and left the room. The Dark Emperor and the Red Fiend were dumbfounded when they saw Ningyu leave. Were they going to let the crew-cut martial artist go just like that? However, they couldn't stop Ningyu's decision and could only follow closely behind Ningyu. Gulp. The crew-cut martial artist couldn't help but gulp as he watched the Dark Emperor and the Red Fiend leave. He had been prepared to die from the start. Who would have thought that there would be light at the end of the tunnel? Ningyu was really letting him go. "Let's go." The crew-cut martial artist didn't stay for long. In a flash, he burrowed into the ground and disappeared. Outside the room, the Dark Emperor couldn't help but ask, "Ningyu, why did you let the crew-cut martial artist go?" "Hee." Ningyu smiled and explained, "I left an imprint in the crew-cut martial artist's body." "I see." The Dark Emperor and the Red Fiend were enlightened. They knew what the imprint meant by Ningyu's words. As long as Ningyu willed it, the crew-cut martial artist would self-destruct. The crew-cut martial artist was a peak Peerless Immortal. If he self-destructed, the power would be very strong. If Di Lingtian and the others weren't prepared, there might be a large number of casualties. At the same time, the crew-cut martial artist moved quickly underground. Not long later, the crew-cut martial artist shot out from the ground and landed in front of Di Lingtian. Seeing the crew-cut martial artist, Di Lingtian frowned slightly, faintly feeling that something was wrong. However, Di Lingtian didn't think too much about it. He looked at the martial artist with the crew cut and asked, "What did you discover in Stellar Sky City?" "I met Ningyu in Stellar Sky City." The crew cut martial artist took a deep breath and answered, "Ningyu." Hearing these two words, Di Lingtian was a little surprised at first. Then, he lifted his right leg and kicked the martial artist with the crew cut. Bang! After being kicked by Di Lingtian, the martial artist with the crew cut fell backward like a kite with a broken string. Rumble. In the process of falling, the flat-top martial artist's body rapidly expanded and soon exploded. Swish, swish, swish. The aftermath of the explosion spread in all directions. Block. It was a critical moment. Di Lingtian waved his hands repeatedly, and a dense celestial chi surged out of his body, forming a protective shield around him. My eyes. My leg. Damn it. Why did the crew-cut martial artist self-destruct? He must be under that Ningyu's control. All sorts of curses and screams rang in Di Lingtian's ears. The crew-cut martial artist was a peak peerless immortal. His self-destruction was extremely powerful. Di Lingtian's expression darkened. The celestial qi in his body was robust enough to withstand the shockwaves from the crew-cut's self-destruction. The late-stage peerless immortal celestial demons, on the other hand, were doomed. A moment later, the shockwaves from the crew-cut martial artist's self-destruction dissipated. More than a dozen celestial demons lay flat in front of Di Lingtian. Crack, crack, crack. Di Lingtian clenched his fists as he looked at the dead celestial demons. His expression turned completely cold. Ningyu, 10 late-stage peerless immortal celestial demons and 3 peak peerless immortal celestial demons were all dead. The remaining 17 peak peerless immortal celestial demons were also covered in wounds. A single self-destruction had reduced the fighting strength of Di Lingtian's forces by almost half. Come with me. The enraged Di Lingtian dashed toward the celestial qi protective shield above Tianxing City. Di Lingtian made up his mind. Even if Skystar's city was in danger, he would blast open the barrier. Whoosh, 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 whoosh. But at that moment, 4 figures shot out of the barrier and appeared in Di Lingtian's line of sight. Ningyu. Di Lingtian would never forget one of the figures. Di Lingtian, how have you been? Ningyu crossed his arms in front of his chest and looked at Di Lingtian with interest. He said indifferently, that brother of yours, Di Dantian, actually wanted to take revenge for you. I'm sorry, I've taken care of him for you. Is that all you know how to do with words? Di Lingtian asked coldly. I'm sorry to disappoint you. Ningyu shrugged. I have a suggestion. Why don't we have a fair duel and the loser leaves? Do you think I'm an idiot? Di Lingtian growled. I'm going to flatten Skystar's city today and leave no one alive. If you don't want the people of Skystar's city to suffer, you can come over and kowtow to me. Maybe I'll be in a good mood and spare them. Di Lingtian's hatred had reached its limit. He'd made up his mind. Whether Ningyu surrendered or not, he was going to bathe Skystar's city in blood. Dark Emperor, step back and maintain the barrier. Since Di Lingtian didn't want a fair duel, Ningyu waved a hand. Hong Mo, enter the red demon sword and kill the enemies with me. Swoosh, swoosh. The Dark Emperor and Ning Lu wasted no time. The Dark Emperor retreated to Skystar's city and maintained the barrier. The Red Devil entered the Red Devil sword and fused with it. Ning Lu, which one will you choose? Ningyu asked Ning Lu. Why don't you leave Di Lingtian to me and you deal with those peak peerless immortal celestial demons? Ning Lu pointed at Di Lingtian. After advancing to early stage Saint Immortal, Ning Lu and Ningyu had a good chance to spar. Without using their trump cards, they were evenly matched. Neither could do anything to the other. They couldn't use their trump cards when sparring with Ningyu, but they could use all their trump cards when sparring with Di Lingtian. Ning Lu wanted to test his true combat strength, so he chose Ningyu and gave the 17 peak peerless immortal celestial demons to Ningyu. Be careful, Di Lingtian isn't weak. Since Ning Lu chose Di Lingtian, Ningyu wouldn't fight with him. Don't worry, I know what I'm doing. Ning Lu looked like he had a card up his sleeve. Ning Lu was formed from the world tree. As his cultivation increased, his combat strength would become more and more terrifying. At the same cultivation level, Ning Lu felt he should be the strongest. Even Ningyu would find it hard to fight him. Of course. That was under the premise that he used all his trump cards. If he didn't use his trump cards, his strength was only SOSO. Have you decided who's going to die? Chapter 2238. Hihi, you'll definitely kill us in 3 moves. The corner of Ning Lu's lips curled up as he smiled faintly and said, Aren't you afraid that the wind will cut your tongue when you talk big? I'll say it here. If you can kill me within 3 moves, I'll change my surname to Di Lu. You're courting death. Di Lingtian's eyes shone brightly. He stomped his feet on the ground and dashed out. In Di Lingtian's opinion, whether it was Ningyu or Ning Lu, they couldn't be stronger than him. because he was a descendant of the sky demons and ranked very high among them. At the same time, his cultivation was at peak early stage Saint Immortal and his combat power was extremely strong. Rumble. Just as he was thinking, he had already arrived in front of Ninglu. He clenched his right fist and punched towards Ninglu's head. Di Lingtian's punch was extremely powerful. If Ninglu was unlucky enough to be hit, even if he didn't die, he would be crippled. Die. Di Lingtian's cold voice sounded as if he could see the scene of Ninglu being killed. Is that so? But at this moment, Ninglu suddenly grinned. If you can hit me, then I lose. Ninglu's calm actions made Di Lingtian's expression change. Oh no. One had to say. Di Lingtian reacted very quickly. In just an instant, he realized that something was wrong. He stopped abruptly and gathered immortal energy at his ankles, trying to retreat with all his might. Bang! But it was too late for Di Lingtian to retreat. Ninglu's silhouette suddenly disappeared. After disappearing, Ninglu suddenly appeared beside Di Lingtian. He punched out. Without any deviation, Ninglu's punch just happened to land on Di Lingtian's chest. Catcher! A crisp sound rang out. Di Lingtian flew out like a kite with a broken string. Swoosh! Ninglu didn't stop after his attack. He chased after Di Lingtian. Ninglu knew very well that he couldn't let his guard down against a powerful expert like Di Lingtian even if he had the upper hand in one move. Swoosh! While Ninglu was fighting Di Lingtian, on the other side, Ningyu was fighting the 17-peak peerless immortal sky demons. Rumble! Even though it was 1 against 17, Ningyu still had the absolute upper hand. Although Ningyu's cultivation base was at the peak of the virtual celestial realm, his overall strength was comparable to an early-stage Saint Celestial Realm martial artist. Kill. Ningyu channeled his immortal chi into the red demon sword and slashed out. After devouring the Empyrean demon, his cultivation had skyrocketed from half-step peerless immortal to mid-peerless immortal. The red demon's ascension to mid-stage peerless immortal meant that the sword had reached mid-stage peerless treasure as well. Puff. With the red demon sword, Ningyu killed a peak peerless immortal celestial demon in a single exchange. Give me. I'm currently at peak mid-stage peerless immortal. If I devour a few more of them, I'll be able to ascend to late-stage peerless immortal. Ascend my ass. We'll talk about that after you kill them all. Ningyu rolled his eyes. There are still 16 peak peerless immortal sky demons left. Keep a close eye on them. Don't let any of them sneak into Skystar's city. The strongest cultivators in Skystar's city were only the peak peerless immortal Sky Alliance's chief and Watermoon Fairy. Think about it. If 2 or 3 peak peerless immortal sky demons entered Skystar's city, the consequences would be unthinkable. Therefore, Ningyu's idea was to kill the celestial demons while preventing them from sneaking into Skystar's city. Don't worry. With me around, I guarantee not a single celestial demon will be able to sneak in. The red demon chuckled, then a terrifying devouring power surged out of the red demon sword. Helpless. Ningyu had no choice but to store the killed celestial demon into the red demon sword. Rumble. After storing the celestial demon, Ningyu gripped the red demon sword again and charged out. Fut. Against these peak peerless immortal sky demons, Ningyu was like a fish in water. 10 celestial demons were slain in just half an hour. The red demon was grinning from ear to ear. If he could devour all 10 peak peerless immortal sky demons, he might even have a chance of breaking through to peak peerless immortal. Of course. The red demon wasn't going to devour them now. He wasn't satisfied. How could only 10 celestial demons satisfy his appetite? His real goal was to devour all 17 celestial demons. The battle continued. The remaining 7 celestial demons weren't fools. They knew they weren't Ningyu's match, so they scattered in different directions, trying to enter Skystar's city from other directions. Follow me. How could Ningyu allow that to happen? With the red demon sword in hand, he pushed his speed to the limit. He caught up to a celestial demon in the blink of an eye and killed it with a single slash. Whoosh. Then, Ningyu moved quickly, arriving in front of another heavenly demon, and chopped off his head. Oh no! After killing 2 celestial demons in a row, Ningyu's expression changed drastically. There was no other reason. Ningyu noticed that the remaining 5 celestial demons had reached the immortal chi barrier. Each of them took out a crystal ball and tossed it at the barrier. Boom! The crystal ball exploded as soon as it neared the barrier. Splat! The terrifying shockwave of the explosion blasted the barrier apart in an instant. One of the 5 celestial demons had been too close to the explosion and died on the spot. Whoosh! Whoosh! The remaining 4 heavenly demons moved quickly and entered through the gap in the protective shield. Dark Emperor! Ningyu yelled when he saw the celestial demons enter the barrier. Swoosh! As soon as Ningyu's voice fell, 2 figures rushed out from beneath Skystar's city. Shueyu Fairy, the head of the brilliant Void Realm. They were the 2 of them. The head of the brilliant Void Realm had recovered to his peak condition. Shueyu Fairy had devoured the world tree trunk and her cultivation had improved to peak peerless immortal level. They had appeared out of nowhere in Skystar's city's moment of crisis and stopped 2 peak peerless immortal celestial demons. However, even if they managed to stop 2 peak peerless immortal celestial demons, there were still 2 more that no one could stop. Not to mention 2, even if only 1 heavenly demon charged into Stellar Sky City, it would be able to cause a huge ruckus. Kill. In the nick of time. The Dark Emperor forced out several drops of blood essence and dripped them on the immortal chi barrier. Swoosh. Instantly, all the immortal chi gathered and blasted at 1 celestial demon. Ha ha ha, I'm going to bathe Skystar's city in blood. Shueyu Fairy blocked 1, the head of the brilliant Void Realm blocked 1, and the Dark Emperor blocked 1. In other words, there was still 1 more celestial demon that no one could stop. Even if Ningyu rushed over now, he wouldn't make it in time. Swoosh. Just then, several figures suddenly rushed out of the Stellar Sky City. In this moment of life and death, almost all cultivators above the peerless immortal level voluntarily joined the fray. You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.